Y'all got to tell me when I'm muted and y'all can't hear me. Can you hear me? Thank you, Quizzical Girl. Good morning, Janelle. I'm eating my breakfast. I'm eating fruit. All right, we're going to get this thing started. I split the baby. I didn't want anybody to be mad at me. So I split the baby. I did a public live, but only members can comment. I feel like that's a good split the baby moment. I don't want anybody to be mad at me. I know. Eventually, I'm not going to care. But at the moment, I didn't want anybody to be mad at me. But I did put the link in the bio. So if you want to become a member, you can do that. I don't know if they're started. We about to get this thing right on the road. I'm going to try to watch it and not pause a lot. But y'all know Hank Brennan makes me absolutely insane. I didn't even wear eyelashes. Because when I get nervous, I start to pull at them. And I don't want to pull all my eyelashes out on camera. All right. I don't know if it started. No spoilers if it has. Let's just get right on into it. We got the only fan anyway. Good morning, Helena. Good morning, Jackie. Good morning. Who's nervous? I'm nervous. Let's see if we fast forward where we get. Are we in real time? We're in real time. What happened to 8:45? She just be lying. We're gonna get started early. It's probably gonna be 8:45, 9, maybe even earlier. I knew it wasn't gonna be earlier because she didn't give them the instructions. We can't start until I read their instructions and agree with them. This lady is crazy. It is a day for my Helena. I got Jen in the chat modding for me. Thank you so much, Jen. I appreciate you. But I knew she wasn't gonna start on time. You didn't give them the final instructions. We gotta go over this. And can y'all hear me good? I got my headphones in so I can hear without disrupting my whole house, screaming at the TV. And I wonder if she's gonna give that instruction about the hoodie. I think she should. I think she absolutely should. I think to pretend that wasn't as big of a blunder as it was irritates me. Yuri Buchanan, for what? For what? Good for you, Attorney Little. Kick him out. Exactly. Helene, it's already 9:37. What happened? We're going to be starting early. I knew they weren't going to start early because she didn't give them what they needed. She didn't give them what she told them they were going to do. They needed their full instructions. You still had to look over stuff. This is the thing with Kim Jong-un up there. She pretends that she gives the jury a lot of grace and credence, right? She pretends that she thinks they're very smart. I think they're smart. I think they'll get it. She's pretending that because she thinks they're dumb too. But if I say I think they're smart, then I don't have to give them all the instructions that you're asking. Like, what exactly is the harm in saying again, remember when we went to the house, that rock that was there is not there? Why would she say, I'm not saying that again? What's the harm? What is that going to do to anybody? It takes 5 seconds. What is the harm in saying, I don't know if you forgot, but just remember, the rock was not there on January 29th. What's the harm? What's the harm in that? Why are you trying to make things less clear? It's because she wants Karen in prison, and I'm so sick of the charade. What is going on? Let's get this show on the road. What the heck is happening? Am I in real time? Yeah, I am. What do you guys think, though? I will say that I am nervous. I am nervous. The Commonwealth is not smiling. The Commonwealth has lost this case. They know it. And I don't think Hank Brennan cares like the Commonwealth cares. Like the Commonwealth wants her in prison. Hank Brennan wants a win under his belt. So that's why he's mad. He's not mad like everybody else mad. That's why at the end he just started going balls to the wall. That's why at the end he just started going balls to the wall. He didn't care. He just started saying anything. He just started doing anything. He had to remember, like, I don't got to come back tomorrow. I don't got to come back if there's appeal. I don't got to come back if they say there's prosecutorial misconduct. Good morning, numbers. I don't got to come back ever. So he just started going balls to the wall. He doesn't really care. Oh, he absolutely did. He absolutely did multiple times, and it went unchecked. So I would even call it judicial misconduct. He absolutely did, and it went unchecked for forever. It went unchecked forever. Let's get this show on the road. I cannot wait to see Alan Jackson in rare form. I feel like it's going to make me cry. I feel like I'm going to be so touched. It's going to make me cry. And then I'm going to have to listen to that sniveling mouse named Hank Brennan. And that's going to piss me off. I want this to be, when it comes on, I'll make me smaller, but I'm so annoyed it hasn't started yet, right? I took a doc appointment break, and I gotta be back at work at 12. So I'm gonna need to get this show on. I'm gonna need to get this show on the road. I thought I was gonna be coming in with a little Zoom room, a little fast forward rewind space. We're right on time. I can't even pause. Ugh. Oh my God. Lally's argument against that instruction pissed me off. It pissed me off so bad because it's like, Lally, why are you doing this man's dirty work? Why are you doing this man's dirty work? To sit up there and say, whether it was
Wix
the
gives you the power of AI to build the website
y'all
you
know
need.
I don't got premium, so we're gonna have to skip some ads. I don't need your judgment. I don't got premium. I refuse to pay for another subscription. Okay. So we're gonna skip some ads and y'all gonna deal. Anywho, to say like whether it was the prosecution or the witness's mistake, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? It wasn't the witness's mistake. He actually, like Alessi said, he actually started to say, those look like cuts, and you cut them off. But it doesn't matter. The thing with the Commonwealth side, the prosecution side, it doesn't matter. They know that it does not matter. It's not really what we say. As long as we say something, she's if it's ever in judicial discretion, as long as we say something, she's gonna go on our side. She's gonna go on our side. Like I can't remember what they were arguing about. I think it was the PowerPoint. And she says, Mr. Brennan, you had an objection. I already looked at it. I know what I think, but tell me what you think. Okay, here we go. Can you guys hear? Let me know if you can hear. Because it sounds like we got some sound now. But until we get in the courtroom, anywho, she says, tell me what you think, because I know what I think. But then you tell the defense, well, you didn't object to it, so. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Let's go. I'm going to try not to pause and blow my head off, but we'll see. Watch, it's going to hit me with an ad at the most opportune time. Watch it. One day. Shut up. Look at her teeth. I hate her.
thank you folks. I apologize for the inconvenience, having you wait around so long. I appreciate your patience. I didn't want to do that today, but I had to do that today. Everybody has worked so hard on this trial, the jurors, the lawyers.
You haven't worked hard on your hair.
That everything has to be right before you hear it.
Look at those
so
bangs.
I had to do that this morning.
Ugh.
I apologize. I do have to ask you those.
Okay, I'm gonna shut up.
Were you all able to follow my instructions and refrain from discussing this case with anyone since we were here yesterday? Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow the instructions?
Okay, I'm gonna shut up, Jan.
Any independent research or investigation into this case? Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see?
Oh, those jurors who don't get
anything about this case since we left here yesterday?
Get to deliberate, gonna be so
So
mad.
as you know, it's time for closing
Oh, I'd be
arguments.
so pissed.
When I was a trial lawyer, I never liked it when just before closing arguments, just before I stood up, the judge would say, jurors, remember, closing arguments are not evidence. But it's true. Closing arguments are not evidence. The lawyers aren't witnesses. And because they're not evidence, I need you to put away your notebooks because you can't take notes on them.
Why can't I hang one on it?
The
I
reason
should
it
be
was
able to connect the
wrong
dots.
is because I sensed that it made it sound like they're less important than anything else in the trial, and they're not. They're certainly a very important part of the case. And we've all noticed that you've paid very close attention to this case.
Oh, I can't
and we know
stand
that
that.
you'll do the same to the closing argument. A couple of things I want to say, and you'll hear more about this in greater detail when I give you the charge. First is, you folks are the fact finders. So it's what you find from the testimony.
He hasn't
your
talked about
memory of the
anything. I hope he
testimony.
talks
This has been a long
afterwards,
trial,
Jen.
But your memory of the testimony, not the lawyers and not mine. So if the lawyers or I say anything that doesn't square with your memory, it's your memory that serves. Secondly,
I
there are
want to comb her
very
hair so
important
bad, especially in the back.
constitutional rights that
I feel like she
think that you
just
understand,
combs the top layer and all of it under there is just
concepts
balled
that
up
you
in a
need to
ball. I hate
understand.
it so
First,
much.
again, the burden of proof in this case is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And
I hate it
law
so
certainty.
much.
And the Commonwealth bears the burden of proof. All right, the burden of proof is on the Commonwealth to prove beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And because of that, in Massachusetts, because the Commonwealth has the burden of proof, the Commonwealth goes last in closing argument. I've given each lawyer an
Oh, they
hour
don't
and
split it up.
15 minutes, and I'm not going to
It's
stop
not
them.
usually how it goes.
So we'll start with the defendant's closing arguments.
Let's go, AJ. Let's go. You look so handsome today, don't he? I like him with the beard mustache combo.
There was no collision. There was no collision. There was no collision. I want to take a minute to start off with thanking you. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for your diligence. This is not an easy undertaking. Most of all, I want to thank you for your courage, because courage is what this moment demands. Not just to listen, but to stare directly at injustice and say, not here, not now, not on our watch. That's what you're being asked to do. Stare down injustice. I want to start with a simple truth. You folks, not us, nobody else in the courtroom, you folks are the last line of defense. The last line of defense between an innocent woman and a system that has tried to break her, that falsely accused her, that tried mightily to bury the truth. This case was corrupted from the start. It was corrupted by biases and conflicts and personal loyalties that you heard about.
Thanks for the
And most fatally, it was corrupted by a lead investigator whose misconduct infected every single part of this case from the top to the bottom. In our opening comments to you a few weeks ago, we told you what to watch for. We warned you what to watch for. We begged you what to watch for. Watch for the physical evidence. Pay attention to the medical facts. Pay attention to the science and the physics. But also pay attention to the integrity, the very essence, the integrity of the investigation. But you also saw something during the course of the trial that none of us might have expected, something that should sadden us, something that maybe would anger us. On full display, you saw the lengths to which some police officers will go to protect their own at the expense of the rest of us, at the expense of Karen Reed, an innocent woman. Before we examine the evidence in the case, which we will do, we need to understand the very foundation of the entire system of justice in which we operate. It's the bedrock on which this entire system is built. Reasonable doubt. This isn't just a technicality, and it's not a slogan. It's a constitutional shield that protects the innocent and prevents the government from punishing without proof. The Commonwealth has the high burden to prove every single element of every single charge beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. As I said, those powerful words are not just some legal jargon. They're your mandate, they're your obligation, they're your community's protection against injustice. In our system of justice, Karen Reed sits here today presumed innocent, cloaked in the presumption of innocence. That presumption is not fragile. It doesn't just disappear because there's a charge or a badge or a theory. That presumption stands firm unless and until the Commonwealth clears that high bar, the highest bar the law provides, proof beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. That means at the end of this case, at the end of the trial, you think about one or more of the charges, you think, you know what, maybe that's true. It might be true. Then you vote not guilty. If you think it's possibly true or probably true, your vote must be not guilty. If someone among you thinks it's likely true or even very likely to be true, your vote is not guilty.
I love that he's driving that home.
It's because none of those standards, maybe, might be, possibly, probably, likely, very likely, none of those meets the extraordinary burden of beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. A moral certainty means a level of confidence so strong, so incredibly unshakable, that you could go home, you would go home, look your loved ones in the eye and say, I am certain. Not probably, not likely. I'm morally certain, and my certainty remains unshakable. The law defines moral certainty as the highest level of certainty known in all human affairs. Think about that. You must be that certain about the entirety,
I agree,
not part of, the entirety of the Commonwealth's case. As we discuss this case, you'll see that the Commonwealth comes nowhere near, nowhere close to reaching that extreme burden of proof. Ladies and gentlemen, on January 28th, 2022, it was a Friday night. John O'Keefe and Karen Reed made plans to meet up with friends, go out for drinks. You saw through video evidence and eyewitnesses that they were affectionate, they were loving, they were in good spirits throughout that evening. They started off at C.F. McCarthy's, which you've heard about, and eventually made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill. When they got there, the Albert family, they were already there, and they were already drinking. The Albert family, it's been established as a very well-known family in Canton. They've got quite the reputation. Brian Albert was at the Waterfall, a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there. She was with him. His brother, Chris Albert, who was a Canton board selectman, he was there. His wife, Julie Albert, their daughter, Caitlin, and his sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, whom you met, and her husband, Matthew McCabe, whom you did not meet. They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. But also present at the Waterfall that night was Brian Albert's friend, Brian Higgins. We know that he had a romantic design on Karen. That becomes an incredibly important fact as we discuss the facts of this case. As the bar was closing around midnight, the Alberts invited everybody back to their house. They wanted to keep the night going. But the evidence revealed something interesting, that the invitation to John O'Keefe appears to have been for a different reason, an alternate reason. Think about the video of Brian Higgins
video
and what Michael Proctor in his...
Now it's time to play Burlington's Guess That Price. Go ahead.
Higgins was agitated after a day of drinking, agitated that it was John and not Karen John with Karen, not him. Recall that ominous text that he sent to Karen with her and John standing just feet away. Well? He got no response. And then we see this.
There we go. Show the video. Absolutely.
That's what Brian Higgins was confronted with following his well text. What of all things starts going through Brian Higgins' mind? Where does his mind go? What is he thinking about after seeing this, after witnessing this? He shows you. And if Michael Proctor had been the least bit interested, this video would have shown him too. Take a look.
Just two big beluga whales playing in the middle of the bar. You're adult man. Sit down. Oh, that would have pissed me off so bad. You're middle-aged. Ew, gay. Why?
Sparring. Practicing.
This has always
Fighting
made me so
techniques.
mad that these
Where
two
was
big,
Brian Higgins'
huge,
mind?
300-pound men
What
were
was he
playing in
thinking
the bar. Fighting
And
in the
then
bar.
what happens? Before you look at the next video, think about what you're going to see. This next video is after he sees John kiss Karen on the forehead, after he sends that aggressive text to Karen with her standing just feet away. Watch closely, and this is what you're going to see. This is what Michael Proctor and his investigation completely ignored. Higgins is very clearly upset. He's agitated. Chris Albert tries to control him, tries to talk to him, calm him down perhaps. Chris forcefully grabs Higgins' arm. You'll see that in the video that you're about to watch. It appears that Chris is trying to calm him down from something. Brian Albert's standing right there with the other two men, but Brian Higgins is having none of it. He appears to be hyper-focused on one person and one person only, John O'Keefe. In an instant, Higgins angrily jerks his arm away from Chris. Higgins rubs his brow, and he directly gestures at John.
Okay, I'm not going to pause too much, but I think this is good. I think what he's doing is good. But I have this comment from Political Girl on the screen because I think after he does this, he should make it clear that it's not their job to solve it. Because then I feel like the jurors are going to get back there and they're going to start fighting about, well, who else? If not her, who else? And that's a place that jurors go way too often, even though they shouldn't. So I like this, but I think he should end it like Quizzical Girl says and say something about, but it's not your job to do that. It's not your job to figure it out. That was Michael Proctor's job. Okay, let's go.
A gesture that looks a lot like, let's step outside. Let's go outside. But John looks at him, takes a swig of beer, completely ignores him. Take a look.
Oh, I love that they have the side-by-side. Him and John are definitely talking to each other, and I wonder why
Michael Proctor,
none of the women there know what they were saying.
The lead investigator in this case had all this footage, but he did nothing. He had access to the exact same thing that you saw. Why did he do nothing? A few minutes later, Higgins then texts John directly. You coming here? 3 question marks. It's now 12:20 a.m. These guys are not good friends. They barely spoke or even acknowledged each other when they walked into the bar together, other than a quick greeting. So why was Higgins coaxing John over to 34 Fairview? You coming here after this? And why not text Karen? Because at that moment, he wasn't interested in Karen. He was interested in John O'Keefe. This is about 5 minutes before John gets out of the SUV and walks toward the house, about 5 minutes before Karen sees him alive for the last time. So what happened inside that house, or that basement, or that garage? What evidence was there for the investigators to look into? What did they ignore? Laceration over John's right eyelid, black eyes, a large dog at the home, an obvious dog bite on John O'Keefe's right arm, a head injury from falling backward onto a hard surface, alleged surface, a text from Higgins, one of the last people to ever communicate with John O'Keefe. "You come in here?" Those words now echo in the wake of John's death. But Michael Proctor, he didn't listen. When John didn't come back outside, Karen, very oblivious.
I also like that he keeps saying Michael Proctor, because I feel like if I was on the jury, it would remind me every time he said it, they're like, oh yeah, where is he? Oh yeah, why didn't I hear from him?
To what had happened, thinking she was just left alone in the car, out in the cold, in the middle of the night. She got frustrated and she drove home. She arrived back at home, and her Wi-Fi connected to John's, her car or phone connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m. It's an important time, 12:36 a.m. She left John voicemail after voicemail after voicemail. He was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. The longer he didn't respond, the more upset she got. Her voicemails reflect that frustration after the fact. That's the frustration that you hear in her angry voicemails. She uses harsh words and foul language. She's obviously upset. She's obviously irritated because he didn't come back out of the house and he wasn't responding. But Karen did not know what you know. She didn't know what the investigators should have known. She didn't know what was happening with Higgins and Albert and with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. When he didn't come home at about 5 a.m., Karen went looking for him in a panic. As you know, her worst fears were realized when she found John beaten, battered, bloody, and left in the snow in Brian Albert's front lawn. At 6 a.m., when Karen found John, you heard about the scene. It was described in detail. It was chaos. To use Mr. Brennan's word in his opening statement, it was bedlam. The screams for help by Karen, the yelling and the hollering, ambulances, emergency lights, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol officers, all of them swarming all over the lawn just under Brian Albert's bedroom window. And of course, as you learned during the course of this trial, Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder trained in being a first responder, never came out of the house. Never went outside to help a fallen fellow officer who was laying on his own property. Never came out. And you learn through the undisputed evidence that the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, for his part, never went into the house. The Commonwealth has struggled to try to prove that John O'Keefe ended up in Brian Albert's front lawn because he was struck by a vehicle. They have failed. They cannot and they will not ever be able to prove that John was struck by a vehicle beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty, because the science does not lie, the medical evidence does not lie, the physics do not lie. Their investigation was flawed from the start because their investigator was corrupted from the start by bias, personal loyalties. Folks, they cannot prove a collision.
Brother.
John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. There was no collision.
I love that.
So let's start there. I want to take a minute to discuss the actual science, the actual physics, and the actual medical evidence that was presented in this case. The science, it's an old saying, is known as the silent witness. It doesn't lie, it doesn't forget, and notably, it doesn't take sides. If there was no collision, what are we doing here?
Period.
In order for there to be a collision, there has to have been an impact site. The vehicle had to have struck John, period. I want to remind you of some of the most important testimony in the entire case, and it comes from the Commonwealth's own medical expert, Dr. Irini Scortibello, the Commonwealth's medical examiner, someone governed by law to make these decisions. We know that a person struck by a vehicle suffers massive trauma, broken bones, fractures, soft tissue damage, torn ligaments, contusions, soft tissue injury, severe tissue injury, crushing blows. None of that was present with John. None of it. Not anywhere on his body, including his right arm. Not one bruise. Nothing.
Which is ridiculous.
The fact is, the injuries are not from a vehicle impact. Not his head injury, not those scratch and bite wounds. Not a single medical expert, think about this, not a single medical expert called by the defense or called by the Commonwealth has testified that John was hit by a car. Not one. Think about the irony. Not one. That's not just significant. It's literally the most important point in the entire trial. Listen again to Dr. Scortibello's words. Question. You did not include in your autopsy, in any fashion, any discussion of whether Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with a motor vehicle accident, did you? Answer. No, I did not. She told you, quote, I did not see any evidence of an impact site, end quote. She was talking about John's body. The Commonwealth's own medical examiner, Dr. Scortibello, performed the autopsy. She did it personally. She's the only one to have personally examined John's body, and she found no evidence of an impact site on his entire body. That in and of itself is reasonable doubt. You don't need anything more. The Commonwealth's case is done. It's cooked. Their own expert said there is no evidence of a collision, no evidence of an impact. If you want to know what an impact looks like, take a look at this. This is what a body looks like after being struck by a car.
I hope they're using Watch Your Slide.
25 miles an hour. And this is what a car looks like after hitting a person at 25 miles an hour. These are exhibits from Dr. Welcher,
yes,
the Commonwealth expert. John didn't even have a bruise. Make no mistake, Dr. Scortibello was presented with the Commonwealth's theory of the case, the same case that you've been presented with, and she refused to conclude that John's death was a homicide. She flatly refused to conclude that there was a collision. And you know who agrees with that?
At Penn Station, your ears may hear, and your craving deep down inside.
They think they're going to force me to get it, but I'm not. You're not going to force me to get it.
Dr. Wolf and Dr. Rentschler, you just met them recently.
I refuse.
They explained they were not initially hired by the defense. They were asked by another agency to conduct their analysis. They looked at the evidence from both sides, not taking a side for the defense or the Commonwealth, completely independent. They looked at the damage to the SUV on the one side of the coin. They looked at the injuries to John O'Keefe on the other side of the coin. Both PhDs, both engineers determined there was no collision. I'm not saying it. The science says it. That SUV's taillight was not damaged by striking an arm, and John was not struck by a 6,000-pound SUV. Period. Full stop. Dr. Dan Wolf did the testing on the taillight. Actual testing, not some ridiculous blue paint kindergarten project. He did lab testing. He did field testing. He did data testing.
He called it a blue paint kindergarten project. The disrespect, I'm almost feeling bad. Between AJ and Rentschler, I'm almost feeling bad. Almost, not quite.
Actual impact force analyses. In every single test at every single speed, the taillight damage was inconsistent with striking an arm. In every test, the taillight damage was inconsistent with damaging the shirt, the sweatshirt. Remember that severe internal damage to Karen Reed's taillight. Not just the outer lens. The internal diffusers were completely smashed, completely shattered. ARCA testing established that all the internal components of every single test taillight, especially the diffusers, remained completely intact. Conversely, on Karen's taillight, the diffusers were almost completely gone. Folks, understand something. If any part of that diffuser portion of the taillight is broken, there is no light. It doesn't illuminate at all. It's just black. Let's take a look at a couple of photos. At 5:07 a.m. at One Meadows, that's the photograph on the left. What do you notice about the right taillight? It's completely illuminated. Later, at 4:12 in the afternoon, photograph on the right, it's lit up. How can that be? How can that be if the Commonwealth claims that those diffusers, the portion that lights up the light, were already scattered all over 34 Fairview? That's their theory. But don't believe your lying eyes. The taillight's completely lit up. That would be impossible. Dr. Andrew Rinchler, a PhD, a biomechanist, explained that at those speeds, the other side of that coin, John's arm would be basically destroyed. Contusions, swelling, torn ligaments, hyperextensions, dislocation of joints and bones, fractured, broken, and shattered. But as you know, John's arm was pristine, save those dog and claw bites. He didn't even have a bruise. Think about this. Think about that photo of those x-rays as you deliberate. You can manipulate a taillight fragment. That's not that hard. You can't manipulate a bruise. If they claim the car was going fast enough to shatter the taillight and shatter the diffusers, then it was also going fast enough to destroy and shatter John's arm, and it simply did not. How do they square that? They don't, and they can't. So they spent nearly $400,000 of taxpayer money to hire someone to dress up and look like John and paint his arm blue.
They bought a
Which told
Lexus
you
in
exactly
Texas. Say it,
nothing.
AJ. Say
The
it.
ARCA testing, conversely, also
Say it.
established that it is impossible for John's sweatshirt sleeve to be damaged by an impact with the taillight. The Commonwealth's theory is that the sleeve of John's hoodie sweatshirt was damaged by flying shards of taillight slicing through the shirt and through John's arm. I have 3 questions. Number 1.
Just 3.
John's arm had about 36 abrasions. How did 36 shards of acrylic go through 9 tiny little puncture holes? How'd that happen? Somebody needs to answer that. Number 2, why are there no slices or cuts in the hoodie? All the defects are punctures. Punctures that you might get from, say, I don't know, canine teeth. And number 3, if the shards cut bloody gouges into John's arm, that's their theory, why is there no blood, no skin, no tissue on a single shard of taillight that they claim came in contact with John's arm? The Commonwealth cannot answer a single one of those questions because John's arm was not impacted by the taillight. It doesn't make sense simply because it didn't happen.
It doesn't fit.
Compare and contrast the ARCA
Must
experts and
acquit.
their actual testing to Judd Welcher. He came to you in the Commonwealth's case in chief, and he told you that for the better part of $500,000, he'd come in and testify that John was tall enough to touch the taillight with his elbow. That's it. And even in that basic demonstration, he had to lean in to manipulate it, to get the results that he wanted. Dr. Welcher didn't claim that the reason he didn't do the reconstruction, the actual testing, think about what he said. There isn't enough evidence to determine what happened. I beg your pardon? What happens when there isn't enough evidence, in his words?
Okay. The dragging of Welcher and Aperture needs to be studied. Why are they dragging that man for filth? Wait
You
a
vote
minute.
not guilty. That's it.
OMG.
And even in that basic demonstration, he had to lean in to manipulate it, to get the results that he wanted. Dr. Welcher then claimed that the reason he didn't do the reconstruction, the actual testing, think about what he said. There isn't enough evidence to determine what happened. I beg your pardon? What happens when there isn't enough evidence, in his words? You vote not guilty. That's what happens. That's out of his mouth, not mine. The Commonwealth also used the same company, Aperture, to try to establish a time of a collision that never occurred. The Commonwealth called Shannon Burgess, the supposed expert from Aperture. There is a cardinal sin for experts, folks, a cardinal sin. It's called confirmation bias. It's when you decide to change your opinion to fit a theory. The most important takeaway from Shannon Burgess' testimony was how brazen, how shameless he was in trying to change the data to try to suit the Commonwealth. Remember Mr. Brennan's opening statement. He made some promises to you. He said, this case is about the data. He stressed it over and over again. They've had 3.5 years to get this right. The Commonwealth has had this case for 3.5 years to get it right. So his top expert, Dr. Welcher, prepares a report. And that report says that John O'Keefe was struck by Karen Reed's SUV at 12:31:38. Note that time, 12:31:38. He was struck, he was immediately incapacitated, he was immediately unconscious. So says Judd Welcher and the Commonwealth's theory. But there was a huge, huge problem with that. And somewhere in the middle of trial, somebody must have realized it. They must have realized that the very data they produced unequivocally establishes that they are wrong about a collision. It could not have happened. Why? Because John was interacting with his phone after 12:31:38. Remember, the collision immediately incapacitating. How could he be interacting with his phone afterward? He was on his phone, opening his phone, checking his phone, reading texts on his phone, and locking his phone, all of it, after 12:31:38, which is the time Welcher clocked for the moment of the impact. And he was taking steps and walking with that phone after 12:31:38 also. That's what their own data showed, and it devastated their case, and it devastated that false theory. There must have been panic, I'm guessing, in the room. What do we do now? The data shows John wasn't struck by the car. What do we do? Enter Shannon Burgess. Question: can you believe him? Can you believe Mr. Burgess? He came up with a brand new story right in the middle of trial. You might ask yourself, would an expert actually say something he knows not to be true? Would an expert actually say something he knows is not supported by fact? Would an expert shade the truth? Mm-hmm. You don't have to look any further than Shannon Burgess's CV to answer that question. That was a shame. Even with the pull and push and stretch and manipulation of the time data that Mr. Burgess came in here and told you about, it still shows that John O'Keefe was very much alive and walking around after they claim he was hit and incapacitated. Think about that. Matt DeSogra looked at Burgess's report and told you that in 30 out of 30 scenarios of the possible time skews that Shannon Burgess identified, he came in the middle of trial and identified all these other time skews that he called it. In every single scenario, John was alive and walking after they said he was hit. And that's a problem for them because there was no collision. Just look at Mr. Whiffin's data, Ian Whiffin. John O'Keefe took 31 steps at a steady rate, about 83 feet, and then think about this, in a westerly direction. That would be right.
Okay, I'm not going to pause anymore. Do y'all think he ends with the fact that everybody's a liar? When does he bring that in? I feel like he's going to. I feel like he needs to. Do you think he ends with there's the science? Now let me tell you how everybody's a liar. I want that part too. Okay.
toward the house. Remember, it's 78 feet to that garage door. That's not a coincidence. The Commonwealth's witnesses, or the Commonwealth's witness, Mr. Ian Whiffen himself conceded that he has reasonable doubts about the accuracy of John's location data. You remember that question and answer on cross-examination by Mr. Alessi? Do you have doubts? I do.
Here comes drama.
Are those doubts reasonable? They are. And remember, it's still the Commonwealth's burden. If their own cell phone expert has a reasonable doubt about John's location, so should you. John O'Keefe was inside, and the phone battery temperature further proves it. This is not speculation, this is science, and it's irrefutable. It tells us that he was not laying outside in the cold, he was inside somewhere a little bit warmer. Ian Whiffen told you that when the iPhone is exposed to freezing temperatures, think about these numbers. When the iPhone is exposed to freezing temperatures, it will drop from 81 to 21 degrees in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's a 60-degree drop in 15 minutes. Now look at John's phone. It was laying, according to the Commonwealth, it was laying directly on frozen ground. He arrived at 34 Fairview and his phone dropped only 20 degrees over the course of an hour. Then inexplicably, it stayed steady, never dropping below 50 degrees for the next 4.5
Here
hours.
comes drama.
Never dropping below 50 degrees for the next 4.5 hours, basically through the entire night. He was not outside. He was someplace warmer, like a basement or a garage. Dr. LaPosada confirmed that John O'Keefe did not have hypothermia. No telltale signs, no telltale Wisniewski spots, no frostbite on any extremity. He did not die of hypothermia because he wasn't outside.
The most telling.
Dr. Isaac Wolf, Dan Wolf, Elizabeth LaPosada, Judson Welsher, Andrew Rinchler, all agreed. Every expert agreed. This is how John O'Keefe died. A rearward fall from a standing position. What could make you fall?
He's using
straight back
Welcher's slides. I
Let's
love
just think
that.
about that for a second. What could make you fall from a standing position as Judd Welcher just showed us? Standing up, falling straight back. Add a laceration to the right eye consistent with a fist or a punch, and you've got your answer. He certainly didn't sustain that wound on the back of his head by falling backwards onto a lawn. Dr. LaPosada told you that the patterned injury on the back of John's head could only be produced by hitting a hard, ridged, or ledged surface, like a concrete stair or step. What's just through that garage door? Michael Proctor never stepped down in that garage to find out. What a shame. And look at the arm. Just look at John's arm. You don't need the top experts in the country, but you had them. You don't need the top medical minds on the planet on this issue, but you had them. These are dog bites and scratches. These are animal wounds. Not one witness
Especially
has
this
been...
one. Like this one right here, anybody with common sense, it's not going to tell me that's not some sort of dog scratch, bite, something. I've had a scratch like this from a cat. This one particularly, you're not going to tell me came from anything but an animal.
Called in their trial, not one. 8 weeks and counting, not one witness who actually disputes that John O'Keefe's arm injuries are from a dog. The Commonwealth could not find a single medical expert, a single medical witness who would come in here and tell you those are inconsistent with a dog bite or a scratch. And it's equally clear that there was no collision. Dr. LaPosada told you in probably the clearest voice in the entire trial. You remember her testimony. He didn't get hit by a car, in her words. He just didn't get hit by a car. You remember the question that was posed by Mr. Brennan, did you consider the speed of the vehicle? And she said, speed didn't matter because he didn't get hit by a car. She repeated it 3 times because it's true, not just because she says so, but because the medical evidence proves it. The medical science proves it. There was no collision. Dr. Rentschler told you unequivocally and just as firmly he didn't get hit by a car. The Commonwealth has not met their burden. They cannot meet their burden. The Commonwealth hasn't called a single medical professional, not one, to testify that John's wounds came from being hit by a car. Not Dr. Scorti-Bello, not Dr. Isaac Wolf. Contrast that with the caliber and the quality of the experts who came in here to tell you what is obvious to anyone with common sense. Those wounds on his right arm are from a dog. This was not an oversight by the Commonwealth. It's just that there is no one out there. No matter how big a check you write, there's not a medical expert who's going to disagree with that. The fact is, this is the central fact in the case. The only fact that matters is literally uncontested by every medical expert. Uncontested, undisputed. There is no evidence that John was hit by a car. None. How much more reasonable doubt could there be? This case should be over right now.
I was looking at this comment by Quizzical Girl, and this is what I'm saying. This is why I want him. I love that he's going with science first. I love that. And he needs to. But I think he needs to end his last 15 minutes with everybody that's a liar. They brought her in. She lied to you. They brought her in. She lied to you. Like, that's how they're going to prove that. That's how they're going to put it together. I don't think he's going to say it outright, but insinuate.
Done. Because there was no collision. So given all that, how did Karen Reed end up sitting here? Why is she even here? Why is she in that chair? Why is she in this courtroom? There is a reason for that. And it's a reason they don't want to tell you, and it's a reality they don't want to admit to. The reason we're here is because the system, the very system that was meant to protect her, that was meant to protect all of us, that system has failed badly. So now let's discuss the facts that were and were not presented by the Commonwealth in this case. Over the next few minutes, I want to talk about the utter failure of the police to investigate this properly and to investigate this fully. And what you're going to see is that Michael Proctor, the lead investigator for the Commonwealth, did nothing to actually and properly investigate this case. Let's start with the house. That's the most logical place to start. I think you'd agree. Brian Albert's house, where John's
I think he should be calling him
body was discovered lifeless in the lawn.
That's a personal preference.
A man, a police officer, is found dead on the front lawn, and no one secures the scene. No tape, no preservation of evidence, no crime scene log, no search warrants, no consent searches, no photographs of the house interior. They didn't treat the house as a crime scene, and shamefully, they didn't even treat the yard as a crime scene. The lame excuse offered by retired Lieutenant Gallagher: it was really cold and windy, and I didn't know if there was a crime that had been committed. What? You didn't know that a crime had potentially been committed? You have a man laying dead in the yard, and here are the undisputed facts that those officers were confronted with. Black eyes. Obviously, black eyes are consistent with a fight. Bloody nose, also consistent with a fight. Bleeding from the face, consistent with a physical altercation. A cut over the right eye, consistent with a punch. No coat in the freezing cold, not dressed for outside, dressed for inside, and one shoe on. I wonder where the other shoe could be. I don't know, maybe in the house 30 feet away. And then you find a broken and shattered drinking glass next to him, the type of glass that you might find, I don't know, let me think about this, in a kitchen in a house 30 feet away. And John's phone was tucked neatly under his back shoulder. Lieutenant Gallagher actually claimed he did not know it was a potential crime that needed investigating. The neighbor across the street, Detective Lieutenant Kelleher, had a ring camera that was pointed at the exact direction where John O'Keefe would have been hit, and nobody bothered to secure it. Nobody bothered to secure it. Nobody even bothered to look at it. Of course this was a potential crime scene. Of course it was. Let's not forget, this was Brian Albert's house, and that comes with privileges. Quote, is the homeowner going to catch any shit? Nope. He's a Boston cop too, end quote. That quote starts to make a little more sense now, doesn't it? Michael Proctor wrote those words just hours after John's body was found. He sent this in a private chat, in a private text he never, ever believed would ever be revealed. He sent that text in a series of messages that now belong to you. You weren't given the opportunity to hear from Michael Proctor, but you can read his thoughts for yourself. And I urge you, go read them. They're in Exhibit 209, 209, in case you're wondering. But here are the highlights. Proctor starts the conversation, quote, all the powers that be, one answers
That
ASAP.
is funny.
He's getting pressure, obviously, to get this done. His friend then asks what Proctor's probably thinking at the time. Quote, I assume you guys are out to make it cut and dry since it involves cops. Something stinks. And Proctor responds, yeah, to the something stinks. And then he goes on, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. Think about that. Hours into this investigation, there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. She's a whack job cunt. Yeah, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though. No ass. No ass bitch. She's got a leaky balloon knot. Leaks poo. Zero chance she skates. She's fucked.
That is so disgusting. Ugh.
And up to this point,
Thanks for becoming a
Michael
member,
Proctor
English Master.
done
English Mastermind.
zero
Well, that's a big, huge dog, isn't it?
investigation. Nothing. Save talk to a grand total of 3 people, all of whom were named Albert or McCabe. That's it. And this was his mindset. This is the same lead investigator who sent the group chats that you heard about with Sergeant Buchnick. Late night, sitting at his office, rifling through Karen's phone, bragging about looking for naked pictures of her. That text wasn't sent to his buddies or his friends. That text was sent to his supervisors at the Massachusetts State Police, for God's sake. And what was their response? Sergeant Buchanan liked this conduct with a big old thumbs up. He encouraged it. Ladies and gentlemen, a lead investigator is every investigator is supposed to be objective, an objective fact finder. No bias, no agenda. Michael Proctor went far beyond just insulting Karen Reed. He dehumanized this woman. He betrayed her as a human being. He was fired for this blatant bias. If the Massachusetts State Police can't trust him, how can you trust him with this investigation?
I took my eyelashes off because of anxiety. I didn't want to pull them out.
And with Karen Reed's life. The lead investigator in a murder trial was never called to testify. Think about that. That should stop you in your tracks. Wouldn't you want to hear from Michael Proctor? Wouldn't you want to hear from the lead investigator in the case? Don't you have questions? The Commonwealth did not present their own lead investigator to the jury, the very jury who is charged with judging the investigation. Michael Proctor clearly is radioactive, and the Commonwealth stayed away from him. Michael Proctor is no longer a Massachusetts State Police officer. He wasn't transferred. He didn't go on sabbatical. He didn't retire. He didn't resign. He was fired. He was terminated for cause. The Massachusetts State Police investigated him, found him guilty of dishonorable conduct, not just for those text messages, folks, for sharing confidential information with witnesses, and for bias. Not just any bias. Bias in this case. Fired. This is the man who touched every single piece of important evidence in this case. All the evidence that was brought before you in this trial went through his hands one way or another. The shirts, the shards. Remember that when Mr. Brennan gets up and gives his closing argument. The shirts, the shards, all in Michael Proctor's possession. Mr. Brennan and the Commonwealth, I think, have pinned their hopes on some microscopic pieces of, or close to microscopic pieces of plastic that were claimed to have been scraped from the hoodie several months after the fact. What he failed to ask every single every single witness, is who had access to that shirt and who had access to those taillight fragments, and the answer is it was Michael Proctor. Not for days, not for weeks, for months on end, for months unaccounted for, before they were submitted to the crime lab, before they were ever scraped. Just go look at the chain of custody documents. You've got them. Why didn't Michael Proctor give those clothes to Maureen Hartnett with the crime lab when she was at Canton PD just days after the fact to receive those Solo cups? Remember that? Just a few days later, she was there. She drove up. She did the driving to take the Solo cups in the grocery bag, which has a ridiculous aspect to it in and of itself as well. Why not just give her the shirts as well?
I know AV is somewhere pulling out a Solo cup right now.
At that point.
Shout out to AV.
Why hold on to them? What could possibly be a reason? Why wait until March to book those into evidence? Now let's talk about some of the other problems with the Commonwealth's evidence.
This has nothing to do with his closing argument, but does it bother anybody else that there's always somebody coughing in a courtroom? Oh, it makes me so mad. Get out. Oh, there's always somebody with a cough. Get out. Okay, I'm sorry. It just, ugh. And this is a very small courtroom. Get out. You and your cough, get out. Okay, I'm sorry.
As I indicated, there was no blood, no skin, no tissue, no DNA found on a single piece or shard of the taillight that the Commonwealth claims cut and sliced into John O'Keefe's arm. Where is that trace evidence? Where is that biological evidence? The DNA. Where is it? They've got nothing. Not a single piece that the Commonwealth wants you to believe cut up John's arm. How is that possible? It's not possible. The only way it's possible is if those shards never touched his arm. Because it was a dog.
Not the whisper.
Oh, and the one sample of DNA that they did find, by the way, was found on the outer, smooth part of the housing. Not any shard. It was the outer, smooth part of the housing. Nothing that they claim actually came in contact with John O'Keefe. Number two, that sample had DNA of two other men, two other unidentified males. That tells you that that DNA had nothing to do with a car strike. That DNA would be expected to be, John's DNA would be expected to be all over that car. Inside, outside, he had access to that car for months and months and months. He was in and out of it all the time. Show me some blood, then we'll talk. They can't, and they won't because it doesn't exist. That SUV never hit John. The hair found on the bumper. The Commonwealth really stretched its own credibility on this one. That magic little hair on the SUV supposedly survived a 37-mile drive in 47-mile-an-hour winds. But that little magic hair just clung there, just hung on. That same hair that moved in between photos in the Sallyport. Remember that? There were two photos taken, and it was either the breath of the photographer or just the movement of walking by the hair. It literally moved between the two photographs. But
there is a debate among trial watchers whether or not that hair has moved or whether it's not an illusion of the camera. I am on the side of that hair is not in the same direction in both those pictures. It does not look like it's just a different angle to me. It looks like that hair is once straight and then once completely curved over. But that's just me. Brilliant minds can differ.
That hair is supposed to have hung on in a 37-mile drive in a blizzard. The only thing that hair proves that the Commonwealth is embarrassingly grasping at straws. That hair has nothing to do with anything. But it doesn't stop there. There was another revelation at trial, a big one, a huge one, and it came from a very unlikely source. Christina Hanley, the quiet, reserved criminalist who told you something the Commonwealth likely did not want revealed because it's devastating to their case. absolutely devastating. And it's this. The glass on the bumper didn't match the cocktail glass. None of it. Remember, February 11th, Michael Proctor, without any other person with him, no witness, no supervisor, no other person with him, claims to have found a single piece of glass at the scene. February 11th, single piece of glass, Michael Proctor. Keep that in mind. Interestingly, the glass on the bumper that didn't match the cocktail glass, one piece did match one other thing. The Proctor glass. Those two go together. The only two things that go together from that bumper are the Proctor glass. We know that there's no glass in the taillight. We know that nothing else was shattered on the vehicle. Therefore, that glass had to be placed there. Didn't come from a crash. Didn't come from a cocktail glass. So how did it get sprinkled on the back of the bumper? Whose proverbial fingerprints are on that glass on the bumper? The only thing it matched was Michael Proctor. What about the Ford Edge and that snowplow driver, Brian Loughran? He observed that Ford Edge parked outside Brian Albert's house at 3:30 a.m. That vehicle was moved directly in front of where John's body was found sometime between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning. The only person connected to a car of that make and model, Brian Albert. Michael Proctor did nothing to investigate that point. Did nothing to investigate whose Ford Edge was parked in a spot specifically to block the line of sight in the exact position where John's body would be later found by Karen Reed. No one, not Michael Proctor or anybody else, checked it for evidence. No one even asked any questions about it. That Ford Edge, Brian Albert's Ford Edge, completely ignored. Michael Proctor failed to interview obvious witnesses in this case. Why? Why didn't he want to speak to the snowplow driver, Brian Loughran? Why did he falsely claim that no one plowed the roadway that morning? When police dash cam video, you saw the dash cam, it shows plows going back and forth all morning. Why did he wait so long, years even, to interview Heather Maxson and Ryan Nagel, individuals who were literally outside 34 Fairview at the exact same time John and Karen arrived at Brian Albert's house that night? Brian Loughran, had he been investigated or interviewed, would have told Michael Proctor that he drove past the lawn multiple times on January 29th, and there was no body on the lawn. He would have had a perfect view. Remember, the weatherman told you there was only enough snow at that time. I think he said, in a very charming phrase, only enough snow to track a cat. I think that was it. There was no body there. Heather Maxson and Ryan Nagel would have told him that they arrived at 34 Fairview shortly after Karen and John pulled up behind them, and they would have told Michael Proctor, at least Heather would have told Michael Proctor, that when she left 10 minutes later, she drove past the SUV and observed Karen Reed in the driver's side, dome light on, passenger seat empty. So where was John? He wasn't outside, wasn't sitting down, wasn't laying down. There's only one place he could be. We could all say it together if you could talk with me. He was in the house. But Michael Proctor did not want to have those answers. He did not want to have to disclose those answers. He didn't want the truth. The Commonwealth has presented a shred of evidence of when Karen Reed consumed her last drink that night. Think about that. It's critical information that the Commonwealth has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. They have to prove when her last drink was that night. They have to prove it. We don't have to prove or disprove anything. Every single witness who was asked and who had an opportunity to observe Karen that night said the same thing. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't stumbling. She wasn't slurring her words. She was, in the words of Ms. Kolakithis, completely normal. Even Jennifer McCabe, grudgingly, had to admit that fact. It's on video. Instead, they used Yuri Buchanan to try to come into court and count sips of alcohol, which he admittedly got wrong. According to Ian Whiffen, the Commonwealth's own expert, the location data, using location data on John's phone, showed Karen driving lawfully. She was driving safely. She was under the speed limit. She was slowing and stopping at stop signs, slowing around corners. And Ryan Nagel corroborated that when he saw her make that left-hand turn onto Fairview. The Commonwealth has
Gotta
an
try to miss
incredibly
that-
high
that
burden to
drunk
prove
charge.
that Karen was driving under the influence. They have failed to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty, because it depends on when she had her last drink. What happened after she got home and she was upset with John for not coming back out of the house? That would answer that question. As you well know, no one searched the house for signs of a struggle. Not that night, not the next day. I'm talking about 34 Fairview. Not ever, not once. Not with a warrant, not with consent. They never went into the basement, the stairwells. They didn't look at the walls. They didn't look in the garage. Nothing was ever examined. Nothing was checked for blood. Nothing was checked for DNA. They didn't look for a ledged or ridged surface. Zero. You'll remember how surprised Jennifer McCabe was to recall that there was a garage door even on the house. Except this was her sister's house. She's been going to that house since she was 5. She's seen that house. She's been in and out of that house hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times. She's been going to that house her entire life, and yet she acted surprised when I asked her about it. Remember Jennifer McCabe's answer when I asked her whether there was a door at the garage? I was asking her about the front door, the side door, and the garage door, and her answer was, oh, actually there is a garage door right there.
Come on, AJ, you don't have to.
Investigators never opened that door.
You didn't have to hit him with the tone.
Let's change the scenario.
tone change.
What if it wasn't the house of a Boston cop? What if it wasn't the house of Brian Albert? We can be certain that
It's
investigators would
funny.
have torn that house apart to get answers about why a fellow police officer was laying dead on the homeowner's lawn. You can betcha. But because this was Brian Albert's house, a Boston cop, nope. And because he was a fellow cop, an insider, they didn't even open the door. That is not justice, folks. That's just pure favoritism. Each of these facts is more than a question mark. They're failures of duty. They're blank spots on a map where justice is supposed to live. And every single one is a reason why you cannot convict Karen Reed. Reasonable doubt abounds. If the Commonwealth failed to investigate every reasonable alternative, how dare they come in here and ask you for a verdict? They didn't investigate the case fully, and yet they're asking you to take the easy road and do their job for them. These facts do not represent reasonable doubt. Nothing does. Every one of these facts that you're seeing that we're talking about represents reasonable doubt. Every one.
Absolutely.
The police and the
does.
prosecution are in a position to take people's liberty. It's the most dire and consequential act a civilized government can take against one of its citizens. Their obligation is not just to try to get it right. They have to convince you to the highest degree of certainty known in human affairs. They have to do it all, every bit of it, beyond any and all reasonable doubt. And they have not done that here. And how about the homeowner himself? The host, the first responder, the Boston cop, Brian Albert, who was sparring and practice fighting with Brian Higgins just minutes before John O'Keefe appeared at his house, 34 Fairview. Brian Albert, who was watching Chloe that night, the German Shepherd. Brian Albert, whose phone and his wife's phone were never secured. Brian Albert, who never came out of the house. But that doesn't mean he wasn't awake. It doesn't mean that he wasn't on his phone. Think about this. Jennifer McCabe claimed that her sister and Brian Albert both slept through this complete chaos right outside their bedroom window. But Jennifer McCabe's phone records tell a different story, and they tell the truth. She spoke with them for the better part of a minute, 38 seconds to be detailed about it, at 5:07 a.m. And then she lied about that call. Remember that? What was the reason for that call at 5:07? Was it panic? Was it a warning? We know that conversation took place at the precise time Karen left her house to go search for John, 5:07. We could answer those questions if we just had access to their phones. Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, But Michael Proctor wasn't interested in their phones. Not only did he not secure their phones, he never even asked. And what about Brian Albert's dog, Chloe? A dog with a history. A dog that is, quote, not good with strangers. Dr. Russell confirmed that John's patterned injuries were from a dog, just like the dog Brian Albert owned. And then Chloe just disappeared.
Poor Chloe.
Not there the next morning. None of the officers that you heard from said that there was a dog in the house.
Justice for Chloe.
See her?
Justice for John.
She's
Justice
gone.
for Chloe.
And then ultimately gotten rid of altogether. Who gets rid of their family pet? Unless they had something to hide.
Or they just sick of them.
Michael Proctor wasn't interested in that either. And recall the group chat with the Alberts and the McCabe's. They were getting their story straight. Matt McCabe, whom the Commonwealth did not call in this trial, instructed the group in that group chat, you'll recall, tell him to say the guy never came in the house. Think about that exact quote. Tell him to say the guy never came in the house. And Brian Albert, the patriarch of the family, exactly, exclamation point. He blessed it. With the truth, as we all know, you don't need to get your story straight. You don't need to tell someone what to say. It's just the truth. And what about the Google search? A Google search that Jennifer McCabe admitted having made. A Google search that was time-stamped by Celebrite at 2:27 a.m. A Google search that read, Hoslong to die in cold. It is uncontested and undisputed that that search was deleted. If the 2:27 a.m. timestamp is not true, why does Jennifer McCabe have to lie about it? Why delete it? If the 2:27 a.m. timestamp is not true, why create a false story about Karen screaming Google hypothermia? That's just a fabrication. That's just a made-up fact. And by the way, if someone does tell you Google hypothermia, why would you Google how long it takes to die in cold? Wouldn't you just Google hypothermia? Jennifer McCabe enlisted Carrie Roberts to help shift the blame to Karen. Why go to that much effort unless you're trying to cover for something? Keep in mind the entire foundation of her claim that Karen said Google hypothermia is this fantasy about Karen screaming it at the location, at the scene. That's her entire excuse. But that story went completely off the rails when Carrie Roberts admitted that she perjured herself to back up Jennifer McCabe's false story. That was a dramatic moment in court. It's an admission of perjury, and you don't see that very often in a courtroom. That tells you everything you need to know about the character and quality of the prosecution's case and their witnesses. Lying and perjury and admitting to it.
I love it.
A fundamental tenet of any investigation is to ensure that witnesses are independent and not influenced by other witnesses. You start by separating the witnesses. Michael Proctor did none of that in this case, and we see the results. Think back to Jennifer McCabe's own text messages with Carrie Roberts. About Carrie Roberts, not with Carrie Roberts, notably. What Carrie Roberts didn't know was at the time she was being interviewed by the police, Jennifer McCabe was, in real time, she was bragging about having influenced Carrie's testimony or her statements to the Alberts and the McCabes. Quote, she's telling them everything, all the stuff. Remember that timeline that we talked about with Jennifer McCabe? That's what she was referring to. She's telling him everything that Jennifer McCabe had put in Carrie Roberts' timeline. The Commonwealth wants you to believe that Karen Reed made a statement at the location, at the scene. I hit him. I'm sure you'll hear that from the prosecution in their final arguments. But their own witnesses contradict that. Jennifer McCabe admitted on cross-examination that her very first statement to law enforcement, confirmed that Karen didn't say anything. She asked, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? The physics and the science answer that question. Could you have hit him? No, you couldn't have. Sergeant Buchanan also testified that the only statements Karen Reed made at the scene, according to his conversations with the first responders, was, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? It wasn't a confession. It was confusion. And Dr. Russell explained that confusion. She told you why Karen Reed or anybody in that position might ask those questions. She was suffering from extreme grief reaction, which according to the evidence can last for years. Even her medical records confirm that diagnosis. It's common to ask those questions in grief. It's common to ask those types of questions in shock. You're trying to make sense out of the nonsensical in the moment. And the Commonwealth has tried to twist those words into a confession. There is no evidence that any officer at the scene ever heard Karen Reed say, I hit him. Not a single police officer at the scene came in to support the Commonwealth's claim. It's not on video, it's not on audio, it's not in a single police report, it's not in a single EMT or EMS report. Nowhere. The fact is, Karen never said, I hit him. You saw the video, multiple officers were right there. She simply never said it. What did Jennifer McCabe do and not do when she got to 34 Fairview? She would have you believe, I want to set the scene for you, that she's confronted out of the blue with John O'Keefe's lifeless body. Her friend, John O'Keefe.
Y'all know this
He's
is my
bruised and battered, he's
magnum
bleeding,
opus.
his eyelid is cut,
This
his
is why I'll
nose is
never
bleeding.
believe
Karen is
Karen
screaming
did.
at the top of her lungs. Carrie is screaming back to Karen, shut up! Both women begin crying. Both women are giving CPR. There's chaos everywhere. It's building in the yard, just feet from Brian Albert's house, Brian Albert's window. Jennifer calls her sister at 6:07. With all this chaos going on, no answer. Jennifer calls her sister at 6:08. With all this chaos and bedlam going on, still no answer.
Yes,
no lights
yes,
come
yes.
on in the
Thank you,
house.
Dr. Welcher.
In the midst of all this screaming and this
Doomed
chaos,
experiment.
Brian Albert doesn't come outside. Nicole Albert doesn't come outside during this maelstrom. And yet, Jennifer McCabe never goes inside to check on her sister.
Y'all know I will die on this hill. This hill specifically. You'll never get me to believe that Karen hit John, because there's no way you get to your sister's house and a body's on the lawn and you don't go inside. This is my hill. I will die. I will take all the shots on this hill specifically. It doesn't make sense. This period. You could have given me all the accident information, all the text stream data, everything. But this hill, I am 100% willing to die on. There's no way you don't go in your sister's house.
There's literally no signs of life inside the house. And Jennifer McCabe doesn't take a foot, a step inside that house to check on her family. Why is that? Does that make any sense? Everyone would sprint inside the house to make sure that there's no one in there that was hurt or injured or, God forbid, dead. Everyone would do that. But not Jennifer McCabe. The only way that makes sense is if Jennifer McCabe already knew that Brian and Nicole were just fine.
See, I'm going to stop pausing. But I don't even think it's that when I say she doesn't go into her sister's house. I'm not even saying like, oh, I think they're hurt. I think I'm going to my sister's house to give her the tea. And if I go in there and she's hurt, I will be like in complete shock, because I don't think what will go through my mind first is that my sister's hurt. I think she don't know what's going on outside. I need to wake her up and tell her what's going on. But either way, I'm going in first. Sorry to that man. I'm going in first.
That's the only reasonable explanation. And the only way she would know that they were fine is if she knew what happened. But Michael Proctor never explored this incredibly suspicious behavior. Don't you have questions? This would give anyone reasonable doubt.
Oh, Potato, that's interesting.
And don't you have questions also about Brian Higgins? Michael Proctor certainly didn't. Higgins had been sending flirtatious and romantic texts to John's girlfriend, Karen Reed. You'll remember I asked Sergeant Buchanan a simple question. Were those texts flirtatious in nature? He refused to answer that simple question. Do you remember that?
Literally refused.
Quote, I'm not comfortable putting a label on that, end quote. We read the texts. It's not a secret. Of course they were flirtatious. Of course they were romantic in nature. The reason he refused to answer that simple question is telling. It's because these flirtatious texts establish a motive for Brian Higgins. Sergeant Buchanan could not bring himself to tell the truth. His bias was on full display. He was covering for another cop. Investigators also ignored Higgins' suspicious late-night visit to the Canton Police Department. That was after a night of drinking, by the way. Why didn't they investigate this? What was so important that Higgins needed to go to the police station at that time, 1:30 in the morning, while drunk, by the way? Why weren't they interested in those facts? Remember, he's an ATF agent. He's a cop, a member of the Blue Wall, and best friends with Brian Albert. He would know that the CPD would be the first to get the call when someone reported John missing or injured. He would know what to look for, what to listen for, to determine if a report had been made and when and what the response was going to be. You saw the skulking through the hallways with his hood up, moving bags between cars, and of course, that late night mysterious phone call on his cell phone, a phone that you don't have and that you'll never see. All of that, and Michael Proctor never gave him a second look. All of that, and the Commonwealth, who's supposed to be after the truth, didn't call him to the stand. If you have any unanswered questions about Brian Higgins, that's reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
The police didn't interview Brian Higgins on January 29th, 2022.
Sure is.
But he was at the police station, as we've just seen. You heard evidence that Higgins and Chief of Police Kenny Berkowitz, also good friends, were in the Sallyport together with the
wildly
SUV
long time.
for a, quote, wildly long time.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly Dever, another Boston cop, told you that. She also told law enforcement agents that she found it, quote, weird that Higgins could have access to that very sensitive evidence, the SUV. Folks, there is never a situation in which a witness, a potential suspect even, should be given access to the evidence in a case. But that's exactly what happened here.
Memory.
Higgins was given unfettered access to that SUV and its taillight nearly immediately, according to Kelly Dever's statement to law enforcement. And it was at that exact time, the exact moments that Higgins would be in that Sallyport, that the 42 minutes of the Sallyport video is just missing. It's just gone, vanished. Well, that's convenient. Now put in context the condition of that taillight when it was actually seized in Dighton. It was cracked, but not completely damaged. I ask you to compare and contrast Officer Kelly Dever, her attitude, her demeanor. That's all for you to judge. Her attitude, her demeanor, her truthfulness, her motives from the witness stand. Compare and contrast that to Sergeant Nick Barrows.
I don't.
Who's more believable?
You know, I'm scared of Twitter. Here comes
Officer
Shauna.
Barrows is unattached
They
to
scare me
any
over
of the
there.
players in this grand play directed by Michael Proctor.
I'm
He's truly
scared.
independent. And what did he tell you? Was the taillight, he was asked, was the taillight in this condition when Michael Proctor picked up that SUV at 412? His answer? Absolutely not.
I'm scared.
Absolutely not. It was cracked, but not completely damaged, not smashed out like that. So how did the taillight get cracked? How did it end up?
Side note: is this Karen's sister? Who is this? Who is this woman? Because she kind of looks like Karen to me. Is her sister? Somebody pin chat.
In the condition where it was cracked, as Officer Barrows saw it, but not completely damaged. Well, you don't have to guess. There's a video. Just watch. That's how it got cracked. And Judson Welcher's own recreation confirms it. Look at the contact. That's from the Commonwealth's expert. And that further is confirmed by the fact that there were no taillight pieces found in any of the initial searches conducted at the scene. 2 searches, 50-foot area searched. Not a single fragment was found until after Michael Proctor had access to and control of that SUV and its taillight. What does that say about the character and quality of this case? It's revealing what happened here at trial. One of the most dramatic moments probably of the trial, Kelly Dever. How can you trust this investigation when you saw how far a police officer will go? You had a front row seat to the power of police manipulation and police corruption. A front row seat. Kelly Dever was interviewed by a separate law enforcement agency, not a friendly department, not Boston Police Department, not Michael Proctor's MSP, a different independent agency. She told those law enforcement agents in a formal interview that she saw Brian Higgins and Chief Kenneth Berkowitz alone in the Sallyport with the SUV. She was detailed, she was clear, she was unequivocal, she remembered the specifics, she recalled how it made her feel, quote, weird. She recalled
get him out. Put Jim out.
How long Higgins spent, a quote, wildly long time, as she described. These are all incredible details to tell law enforcement. She couldn't have been clearer. She couldn't have been more specific. But then she's put on a witness list and she's subpoenaed by the defense. Oh boy. Then this rookie cop was called up to the police commissioner's office. The same commissioner that was the boss of Brian Albert. They have a meeting, a private meeting, and he says, wink, wink, nod, nod.
Not wink, wink, nod, nod.
Officer Dever. What else was said in that meeting? What else is reasonable to believe was said in that meeting? She claimed she couldn't remember. She claimed not to remember if he instructed her to do the right thing. But the commissioner of the Boston Police Department certainly said something to this rookie cop, and all of a sudden, that detailed, unambiguous, unequivocal statement to law enforcement became, what did she say? A false memory. Not I didn't say it. She admitted she said it. She admitted she detailed the entire story. She just said, it's a false memory. What? So she's called to the commissioner's.
Alan Jackson, please. Please, sir. What? Please. This is a serious court case, Mr. Jackson. OMG. Please. Okay. This is a very serious moment.
Office to make sure that she would do the right thing. That's why she was called. And now we know what that means. In her words, my entire career depends on what I say here on the stand. I'll quote that again. Quote, my entire career depends on what I say here on the stand. You bet it does. That's how it works. And that's how we got here. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, can you trust the Commonwealth's case? Can you trust their witnesses? Can you trust their evidence? And here are a few of the highlights. A video that was played in a courtroom and sold as accurate. Turns out it was completely inverted, flipped backward, completely false. The test that formed the basis of their entire theory of the case. Watch closely as Dr. Welcher stands as a surrogate. Is that a righteous test? Or is that a manipulation? Dr. Welcher tried to deceive and fool you by leaning into the car, manipulating the results of his own test. When the truth was revealed by Dr. Rentschler, the Commonwealth spent the next hour cross-examining him about how that test was meaningless. It actually didn't mean anything. Well, that's convenient now that we realize that it was a manipulated test, and it actually does mean nothing. It didn't represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case. That's what was suggested. That test does not represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case. Really? Then why was Dr. Welcher playing dress-up in John O'Keefe's clothes, or identical clothes to John O'Keefe, when he was holding a glass? Why was he holding the glass right behind the vehicle?
Alan Jackson thinks this is a joke. Why did he say that grown man was playing dress up? Alan, this is... We are being very serious right now. What is wrong with you? Why did he say that grown man is playing dress up? Alan Jackson, I need you to get it. We're not going to be able to make it if Alan Jackson keeps playing in this courtroom. Okay. Oh, MG.
Is that a righteous test? Or is that a manipulation? Dr. Welcher tried to deceive and fool you by leaning into the car, manipulating the results of his own test. When the truth was revealed by Dr. Rentschler, the Commonwealth spent the next hour cross-examining him about how that test was meaningless. It actually didn't mean anything. Well, that's convenient now that we realize that it was a manipulated test, and it actually does mean nothing. It didn't represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case. That's what was suggested. That test does not represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case. Really? Then why was Dr. Welcher playing dress-up in John O'Keefe's clothes, or identical clothes to John O'Keefe, when he was holding a glass? Why was he holding the glass right behind the vehicle? And why was he standing with his right arm oriented to the right rear taillight if he wasn't trying to recreate the circumstance that is the Commonwealth's entire theory? The Commonwealth stood up here with a straight face and told you they weren't trying to suggest that that's how John was hit by the car. Of course they were trying to suggest that's their theory of the case.
Even he's laughing.
2 days ago when it was revealed by our experts that it's physically impossible. That silent witness, that science, that physics has become very pesky to the Commonwealth because there was no collision. Dr. Welcher also told you under oath that there were no x-rays taken of John's arm. He tried to deceive you into believing that John's arm might have been broken. I don't know. I didn't see any x-rays, so I can't tell you what the damage was inside the arm. Really? The Commonwealth has had those x-rays in their possession for 3 years. And again, it took the defense to bring out the truth. The x-rays do not fit the Commonwealth's theory, so you weren't shown. And Dr. Welcher wasn't going to admit it. And my goodness, then we get to the sweatshirt. That was the moment. Mr. Brennan stood here in front of you and dramatically held up John's sweatshirt. Not just to the witness, but to you. And asked Dr. Wolf about it multiple times. Specifically, while it was in that plexiglass, asked Dr. Wolf about the multiple holes in the back of the sweatshirt. He interrupted Dr. Wolf, and Dr. Wolf started to look at the sweatshirt and say, well, and he said, how about here? Here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole. Dramatically tapping on that plexiglass. It was clear what the suggestion was, that the holes in the back of John's sweatshirt were from January 29th. That's the impression that was expected to be left with you. That's the impression that he wanted to leave with you. And that's false. The truth is,
thanks for the
Commonwealth created those holes. They aren't holes from road rash. They weren't made on January 29th. Those are cuttings from the Commonwealth's own crime lab, folks. That's what those holes are. And even with 3 prosecutors, all 3 of them, sitting right there in the room at the time, it had to be the defense to correct that record, to bring out the truth. If we hadn't done that, what impression would you folks have been left with? That's more than negligence.
Okay, question. Do you think Brennan is going to get up there and apologize for that? I don't, because I think Brennan doesn't like to mention bad facts more than once. But do you think he gets up there and apologizes for that? Or does he just ignore it completely? My vote is ignore it completely. Let's see.
That's dangerous. It's dangerous. I'm going to guess that Mr. Brennan's not going to say much about this, about the fraud that was attempted on you. And if he doesn't, that speaks louder than any concocted excuse that the Commonwealth might come up with. It's shameful. It's shameful. We are after the truth in this courtroom. You're entitled to it. Demand it. Why would the Commonwealth
Is he over
stoop
there?
to a
Where
stunt
is he?
like that?
I didn't see him.
It's desperation. They know what you now know, what their experts know. There was no collision. So now we've reached the final moments of the trial, and you've seen the facts and you've seen the evidence, and we've just talked about dozens and dozens and dozens of facts that are reasonable doubt. Each one of them are reasonable doubts. These facts, these note cards that you're looking at, piled high, one on top of another, literally stacks and stacks of them covering the table. As you mentally sift through those cards, realize that every one of them is a massive hole in the Commonwealth's case. Every single one of the note cards
I feel like that would be
represents
intimidation. I
a
would
hole
actually
in the
have him moved
Commonwealth's
if he
case.
is
If
back
you're
there.
holding mentally
I would actually
even
have
one
him
of those cards, you're holding reasonable doubt, folks. You're holding a not guilty verdict. Reasonable doubt is not a sliding scale. It's a wall. If the Commonwealth cannot get over every one of these dozens of walls, you have to acquit Karen Reed. The truth is, Karen Reed is not guilty. Not because of technicalities, but because the facts, the law, the science, the physics, the data, they all say so. They demand it. The Commonwealth does not have a theory about how John was hit by the car. They haven't even shown you that it's possible that he was hit by a car. And the reason they haven't is because it's not possible that he was hit by a car. There was no collision. Your job is not to do their job, their burden entirely. It's theirs. They have to prove this case and their theory beyond all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And not only do they not have a theory, they can't prove one that doesn't exist. All you need to know is that the Commonwealth failed. They failed to provide you with a truthful representation. They failed to prove the essence of their case, that John was even hit by a car to begin with. They failed to prove any intent on the part of Karen Reed because she has none. They failed to investigate the actual suspects in this case. They failed to present the lead investigator to you. They failed to justify the perjured testimony that you heard discussed in this case. They failed to hold accountable an officer who came in here and lied to you and claimed false memories so she could do the right thing to cover for a fellow cop or cops. They failed to maintain a fair and unbiased and honest investigation. They failed to present you with the truth. And this is what you get. An investigation that's riddled with errors and omissions and a rush to judgment and conflicted and corrupted from the start. Every part of it. That is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. How can they ask you to be morally certain based on this evidence? It's a tragedy.
He's never the lead investigator.
When the government fails so completely, so catastrophically.
There is no lead, remember?
When there are dozens and dozens of points of reasonable doubt on the table, your duty, your oath is clear. Your sworn obligation under the law is to acquit Karen Reed. Not just because you can, because you must. Justice demands it. Do not let the Commonwealth get away with this. Don't let them get away with this. Do not endorse and sanction an investigation that is broken and corrupted top to bottom. But just as importantly, do not let Michael Proctor get away with it. And make no mistake about it, folks. If you convict Karen Read of anything, if you convict her of anything, science, the physics, the data, they lose. But tragically, Michael Proctor wins. Remember his texts. Something stinks. Yeah, but serious charges will be brought on the girl. She's fucked. Could you ever say to yourself, this is justice? The fact is there was no collision. A car did not kill John O'Keefe. So I ask you, let your voice be heard, not in whispers, but in truth. Let the community feel, through your verdict, that justice cannot be bent and that it will not be buried. Find Karen Read not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Thank you.
Chef's kiss. Amazing. Alan Jackson wouldn't change a thing. I throw in a little more of the lies, and I would agree with Quizzical Girl. I think one sentence of, it's not your job to figure out what happened. I think he may have. I don't know. But I make that clear. But I think that was beautiful. I think you could not have done a better job. And we know what Brennan's about to get up there and say. I hit him. I hit him. I hit him. That's all she's about to get up there and say. That's all he's going to get up there and say. I don't even really want to listen to Brennan's sniveling little voice. But I think that was an amazing, amazing, amazing closing argument. You can't get better. I bow at the feet of the master. That was amazing. That was amazing. Let's listen to this human. Let's make sure I don't break anything when I sit this down.
John O'Keefe was 46 years old. 46 years old. He spent his life helping people. He's described as a good man, kind, generous, thoughtful. He was a Boston police officer. He worked to help the community. Everything you've heard about this man, he was a good man. He helped people. When his niece and nephew had nobody, he took them in. He took them in.
Oh, shoot. It's
John
me.
O'Keefe
I'm sorry.
Seemed to be the type of person who would help anybody at any time. And on January 29th, 2022, John O'Keefe needed some help.
He's already about to piss me
He
off.
needed help from somebody else. You see, John O'Keefe had just been hit by Karen Read in front of 34 Fairview Road, and he lay on the ground dying. And he needed help. Someone to reach out a hand, someone to knock on a door, someone to make a phone call to 911, even anonymously. Not take responsibility, just to help. And there was only one person in this entire planet who could help him that morning, to give him a chance. Maybe it was a 33% chance if he met the Isaac Wolf of the world. But to give him a chance. And that one person who could help him that morning was this defendant right here, Karen Reed. And she made a decision. In her Lexus with the shattered taillight, debris field all over the front yard, and John O'Keefe lying helpless like a child on the front yard. She made a choice. She didn't call 911. She didn't run to his aid. She didn't knock on a door.
Doesn't it seem like he's already pissing me off? Doesn't it seem like you would prove a collision before you talk about how she's the one who needed to get him help? Are you How are you pissing me off this fast? How are you pissing me off this fast? How have you decided that she's the one who needs to get him help when you haven't proven there was a collision? How are you starting backwards to forward? You started in the middle. See why I took my eyelashes off? Do you see why I took my eyelashes off? All right, I'm gonna let this fool talk.
She made a decision about herself. In her Lexus, she drove away.
No, I don't want from the store, but I want a shawarma sandwich with some McDonald's fries and a side of garlic sauce. Thank you.
And she left him to die. She was drunk. She hit him, and she left him to die. Before I go through and detail the evidence, let's talk a little bit about the evidence as a whole. She was drunk.
And put your glasses
up. She was drinking
up.
that night. She was drinking at McCarthy's with John. She was drinking at the waterfall. Her blood was taken with samples of a retrograde analysis, almost 2 to 3 times the legal limit. She was drunk. She hit him. The timeline in this case is beyond dispute. You can accuse, assault, characterize, malign, twist. The timeline doesn't change. It is data. Data is data.
Exactly, Elena.
The black box.
Exactly.
The forensics from the SD card. We know exactly step by step where they were. We know in that window, she hits him.
Okay, but is it me? Is it me? Or does he not even sound sure? Compared to what we just heard from Alan Jackson, he sounds like he's not sure. You're not doing good, Hanky Spanky. You would not be convincing me, Hanky Spanky. And I just cannot believe that John's mother listened to that defense closing and still, right now, believes Karen Reed hit him with her car. This is why this jury scares me, because they're all from the same area. Ugh.
Because he never moves again. His healthcare data. The temperature on the battery of the cell phone.
And if he says healthcare data one more time, I'm going to
physical evidence, the debris field, the DNA, the hair. And then she left him to die.
And yes, there usually is something about whether or not you can cry in court. I would have her move, because all of a sudden you emotional. You would have been emotional the whole time. He's not even saying anything that makes anybody emotional. You are strictly playing to the jury. Get her out of here. I'm sorry. I know your son is dead and I appreciate that, but you're not going to act like all of a sudden you can't hold in your emotions. All right. I'm sorry. I told y'all he was going to be the one to piss me off. He was going to do it. I was sitting there quietly. I was listening to Alan Jackson. And then here comes this idiot and her back there acting like anything he said would demand tears. Okay. My bad.
He had a basal skull fracture, counter coup. You heard all about it when the back of your head hits the ground and the brain comes forward. Dr. Wolf told us The reason why they have level 1 trauma centers around the country is because people can survive this injury if they get help. That's why they have this care. That's why they have these hospitals. But you gotta get help. You gotta get help. And if you don't, you develop symptoms, ecchymosis, raccoon eyes, your brain swells, and you die.
I don't like this man. I just don't like him.
She was drunk. And that night was a recipe for disaster. But before we get to the drinking, in some ways, the fate of this night was sealed well before that night, because John O'Keefe and Karen Reed were in a toxic relationship. This relationship was crumbling. We hear lovey-dovey, and it was crumbling, and we know it. And we know it because a month before, his niece Kaylee talks about when they went to Aruba. It should have been a wonderful event. It was discord. It was fighting. It was aggravation. And when they got back, the discontent was palpable. Miss Reed reaches out to Brian Higgins, text messaging. John O'Keefe, the relationship is crumbling. And you heard a little bit about what that relationship was like. Kaylee, his niece, told you, when there was an argument, John would do what John does. He would walk away. She described for you one time, to get away from the scene, he walked into his bedroom. But the defendant wouldn't let it go, pounding on his door, having to get the last word, never letting go of the fight.
Yeah, because
Kind of mirrors what happened on January 29, 2022. And maybe outward appearance, they got along. Maybe sometimes quietly they got along. But behind closed doors, relationships have up and downs. We have a bird's eye view into the relationship on January 28, 2022, because we have the text messages, not so lovey-dovey. The relationship is almost over.
And so she killed them.
Tensions are simmering beneath
Like
the
nobody
surface.
believes you, Hanky. Sorry, it's me.
They are not getting along.
Nobody believes you.
She believes Mr. Keefe is already halfway out of the relationship and he's not into it anymore. You will read them, you saw them. This relationship was unstable and at its end. And so fast forward that night. That night,
to an hour of this
after this discord, after the arguing, they go out and what do? They drink. And they drink a lot. So Keith drinks a lot, and Karen Reed drinks a lot. You've seen the McCarthy videos. You can call it 6, 7, 8, whatever you want to call it. You can see the shots into the mixed drinks. More shots into mixed drinks. Count them yourself. Over a half dozen mixed drinks in just a few hours. Sober? And then at the waterfall.
He doesn't even understand how pushing the narrative that she's drunk smashes his argument, because you're going to tell me that she's blackout drunk if she's able to pull forward and back up on a windy road in enough, straight enough to hit him and then stop on a dime so as to not hit Higgins' Jeep and then make it all the way back home. But you want me to believe she's blackout drunk. He doesn't even realize how his own arguments make his argument ridiculous. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop pausing. Hank Brennan gets on my nerves. Okay.
A shot. A mixed drink. Now, it was brought up the waterfall that there was some type of discord between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. They knew each other. They were friends. Brian Higgins' conduct of speaking to Karen Reed is not honorable. It's not. But they were friendly. There was no adversarial relationship. There was no anger between them. What we heard is they barely greeted each other. Could we have slide one, please? At the Waterfall Bar, when you see John O'Keefe come in, here's him barely greeting him. That's him and Mr. Higgins. Barely greeting each other. Reality sometimes is different than argument.
Again, smashing your own argument. Because if they're barely greeting each other, then why would Higgins be the one to text John and ask him, is he coming here? It doesn't make sense. And he is so focused on the argument that he's making at the time that he forgets everything else. Why would you point out that they're barely greeting each other? If they're barely greeting each other, why does Higgins care what the hell John is doing? What are you talking about? Oh my God. I'm so glad I removed my lashes because I would just be sitting here. Okay.
This is a celebratory mood. Take that down, please. Celebratory mood. A bunch of friends. They're playing around. They're hugging. They're grappling. This is a fighting technique for a murder 2 hours later. Is that the story?
Again, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. This is gonna be the last time I pause. But again, smashing your own argument with your argument. So this is not enough for a murder. But having an argument that seems ridiculous to you. But having one little argument is, oh my God, this man. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. No more pausing. I'm going to keep it to myself. Okay, here we go.
Practicing their moves to murder Keith. In the celebratory mood, you don't see any aggravation or animus between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. Inevitably, the next morning, Karen Reed is brought to the hospital and they take her blood.
No, why you don't want to talk about the fight?
Now, the government doesn't have to prove that she was drunk. It is either that she's over the legal limit, 0.08, or she had enough alcohol to affect her ability to operate a motor vehicle safely, but you will know that she was far beyond the legal limit. After the retrograde analysis, almost 2 to 3 times the legal limit. Almost 2 to 3 times the legal limit.
Which doesn't make sense. If she stopped drinking at 12, there's no way she's double the legal limit at 6.
Intimated.
Unless she kept drinking.
Tom said that maybe she went home and started drinking after she got home. No evidence, mind you. No evidence. And that somehow that is why she had a high blood alcohol level. It's not appropriate for me to comment on the credibility of another attorney's argument, so I won't do that. But Karen Reed will do that for her. So if we listen to slide 2, she'll tell you exactly what she thinks about that claim.
My alcohol intake's probably about 5 or 6 or 4. The drinks that they were pouring me at McCarthy's, which is where I consumed most of the alcohol, was the weakest vodka tonic. It tasted just like old soda water with lime.
I will say, I wonder why Jackson didn't mention the clips and mention that they were out of context. Just only had an hour.
I wouldn't have gotten on the expressway at 12:15 on January 29th. I mean, it was quiet, the roads were very quiet, you can see on the videos. And I was going, when I've had a few drinks and I drive, I always go extra slow. I know my alerts aren't as sharp as they should be. But I shouldn't be driving.
Thank you.
But she's in the car with her cop boyfriend.
You think
so if her cop boyfriend let her drive, then back up. That was too close on that little squirrel face.
When they leave the waterfall bar at 12:12, you see a video, you have it in evidence, there's a still photo of John O'Keefe holding a glass. Not from the Albert's home. He didn't sneak into the house in the cupboards and grab a glass. From the waterfall, you see him with a glass, and in it is a straw. Take a look at that picture. And now from 12:12 on, we virtually have a historian in the data that tells us exactly where he went, exactly step by step where he went. And how do we have that? Well, we know the defendant's car had like a black box, and Judd Welcher, Dr. Judd Welcher, took the data from the black box.
I keep saying his name like that.
You can see the movements and the triggering events. And then Shannon Burgess, well, you don't like what he says, don't attack the data, attack the man. He can be mocked for his LinkedIn profile or his unupdated CV. But what he did is he found a key, critical piece of this case that did not exist before. He found it recently. And it was that SD card. The SD card that everybody missed, including the defense expert. Everybody missed it. So as much
What
as you
defense
want to
expert?
make fun of him, Shannon Welch
Defense
found
didn't
the
have an
key
expert.
so that we could have the time and date and location coordinated for an impenetrable timeline that can't be broken. That's what Shannon Burgess did. And so we know on the way from the waterfall to 34 Fairview, Ms. Reed is driving drunk. Mr. O'Keefe is in the passenger side of the car, and they're heading their way to 34 Fairview, and they get lost. And now we have more data because John O'Keefe has a cell phone. And I said it at the beginning, it is a historian. It doesn't suffer from bias, it doesn't suffer from prejudice, it doesn't suffer from memory loss. It has data on it. And he puts on Waze, high location data, as Ian Whiffen would say. And it tells you second by second the speed,
Isn't
the
me or
location,
I don't care.
the movement. That's what it does. And he has
And it's
healthcare data
not
on that phone.
okay. This is the last time for real. It's not even that it's Hank Brennan. I mean, it is, but it's not that I don't agree with him. He's just not commanding my attention. Like if I was a juror, I would be tuned out. Something about his voice, something about the cadence of it, something about listening to him after Alan Jackson, who is a master orator. I just don't care. I just don't care. But all right, we'll continue to listen.
Healthcare data separately shows his movement, and that is critical. It is critical because it not only shows his movement, it shows when he does not move. That healthcare data is critical.
Say it. Oh, I would
And it's not
stop
subject to
calling it
bias. It's
healthcare
not
data.
in dispute. There's no other contrary evidence. It is data. On the way to 34 Fairview, alcohol fuels tension. We know that. And we know from those text messages the tension in that relationship, and then there's a trigger. There is a trigger
What's the
on the
trigger?
way because they're lost, and when John O'Keefe calls Jen McCabe for directions, Jen McCabe says something that triggers what's going to happen next. Could I have slide 4, please?
Very close to the outlets. In fact, when Jen was navigating John to the outlets when I was driving, she said it's near Ashley's house.
I'm glad their
Ashley
video's not
and
working.
John were hooked up prior to John and I dating.
And so as they travel to 34 Fairview, under the duress of this crumbling
I'm not even
relationship,
mad. Here comes drama. I don't
through
even care. Like
intoxication,
he's just ugh.
we have triggers. Now, we know on their
Master
way there,
gaslighter.
we know from the data,
Driver's training.
the data, where they went, how they moved. If we look at slide 5, Ian Whiffen showed you a guide. You could enlarge that just a little, please. And it shows you with the healthcare data.
Oh, I hate that he says healthcare data.
But it doesn't mean someone's climbing upstairs. What it means is there's an elevation, and he breaks down the data, the red, the green, if you could move down to the fulfillment.
Did we ever figure out why there's an elevation? Because I feel like I remember somebody saying that's a very flat road. So what do you mean there's an elevation? Anyway.
And then in the bottom left, that's 34 Fairview. You can see second by second the circles of their route, even the 3-point turn on Cedar Crest. That's what you see. At that point, they've left the bar. Remember, the battery temperature was 82 degrees. They're now in a car. It's now 77 degrees. Think about how accurate the battery temperature is, that it reflects the difference between being in a bar and being in a car. They take a 3-point turn at Cedar Crest. And because of Shannon Burgess and because of Judd Welcher, we have the data, and it's a triggering event. Remember, if there's an acceleration past 30%, it registers data on the car, and that's exactly what happens. Is a 3-point turn, and it all lines up with the cell phone after you synchronize the times. It's that simple. It's nothing complicated. There's nothing tricky. There's nothing devious about it. It's data. They do the 3-point turn, and you can match the cell phone
stand the
clock
man
with the Lexus clock And when you do, you can reconcile the difference. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of argument, a lot of fights. Shannon Burgess says 21 to 29 seconds. Mr. DeSorga comes in. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to actually do anything. He wasn't given the invitation to test the data. He just looked at the report and made criticisms like a Monday morning quarterback. But even he, looking at the data, says, well, it's 3 seconds off or 2 seconds. Same window, same time. We can have all the arguments we want. They're there, they're together. The data matches up perfectly, perfectly. And so they make their way down to 34 Fairview Road. They don't stop. They don't stop at the driveway. They don't stop. And John O'Keefe gets out of the car. They go to the flagpole, and we know for 2 reasons. One, the data. And secondly, Mr. Nagel and Ms. Mason at Cedar Crest, at that intersection before it goes down to the right, they meet. They let Karen Reed go first. They fall behind in the truck. Now, at this point, Mr. O'Keefe has about 8 more minutes before the beginning of the end of his life. And he's in that car. He's in that car for most of it. Because Ms. Mason and Mr. Nagel don't see anybody get out of the truck. Nobody crosses the lawn. Nobody goes to a garage. Not just because they didn't see it. And they didn't. Not because they didn't see it. Because the healthcare data on the phone shows that John O'Keefe is not moving. The car is stopped at the flagpole. The healthcare data stops. The battery stays at 77 degrees. The data is the data. You can't change it as much as you want to. It's data. And they sit at that flagpole for minutes. It's 12, 24, 33 when they get there. They're there past 12:30. Remember, Ms. Mason and Ms. Nagel said they were there about 5 minutes and then they go. It's not exact, but about 5 minutes, they said. So there's about 2 minutes left for John O'Keefe. And what are they doing in those 2 minutes? What are the last 2 minutes of his life that he can remember that would be open to him? They're arguing. They're arguing. They're arguing. And we know they're arguing because Ms. Reed tells us through first responder Becker. She was sad. Remember, he sees her in the back of the ambulance and he's trying to calm her down? She was sad because her last moments were arguing. They're in an argument. That's why they're not going in the house.
Why is he over there shaking his head? Yeah.
John O'Keefe decides to get out of the
Did
car.
you see that?
We know because the dome light goes on. That's what happens when you open a
Is he
door.
just old and got
So
a
he's
little
bent
shakes,
down,
or
he's
is
standing
he
outside
saying
on
like,
the
yeah,
other
like he
side.
agrees?
The dome light is on.
I don't appreciate that.
And then you see the data. John O'Keefe begins to move. 12:31:56. It's the first time he has moved since they got to the flagpole, and it will be the last time he moves in his life.
So she hit him instantly? What?
And he moves to 20 seconds. Ian Whiffen said that the satellites, they move, they reconnect, they pull information. He's no longer on high frequency data because waves are shut off. Now it's more random, it's low frequency. We would never suggest, and Mr. Whiffen did not claim, based on location data alone at that point, you can tell exactly what John O'Keefe is. What he said is it was readings all night. The bullet is always near the flagpole. That doesn't mean he was always near the flagpole. He could have moved. He could have moved in the circles and come back. Location data is consistent
In a
with him
circle
never
to
leaving
come
the
back.
flagpole. But that in itself is not enough. But there's more. There is more.
What's more?
There's the healthcare data. There is the temperature of the cell phone battery. And so he moves to 20 seconds. It turns west. It does not say he walks to the house. That's not what the data says. It doesn't
Says
say
he went
that
80
goes
feet.
Straight line, and he walks over.
Where are
to
you
the door.
going?
In fact, could he even get to the door in 75 feet? Could he get there? Because when the investigator for the defense testified, he measures from the driveway. He never stopped at the driveway. He never measures from the flagpole. He never measures from the flagpole to the garage door. So this fantasy that somehow he walked in the garage, even though there's no evidence, there's no witness, there's no data. 20 seconds of his life, and he moves. And healthcare data registers his steps.
So he just
It could
stood
be
there?
pacing, it could be a straight line. It
Why
could
would he be
shaking
pacing in the
phone.
snow?
We don't know. We don't know. We don't know
That's the point.
everything. We don't know every little detail and every little second. We don't have to. That's
Oh,
not
I
doubt. That's not
cannot
reasonable
stand
doubt.
him, you guys. I can't stand him.
We know for
can't
that
stand
20 seconds, he's moving. And in that 20-second window, when he moves,
What do you know?
he has his phone and he looks down, 12:32:09, he sees a text message from his friend, John McCabe.
And then she
And he looks at the text message.
backs up, hits him,
and he
zooms
closes
home.
it.
12:36.
And then it happens.
Where's the rest of the
We
data?
know
Why can't y'all see
from
her
the
ride home?
uncontroverted data from that black box. We know that Karen Reed, after he gets out of the car, drives away. She drives for at least 33 feet away from him. He's back near the flagpole. She's gone. It's over. Whatever argument is over. Whatever anger and flame has been dispassioned, she's moved on. He's separate from her. He's safe.
He just stands in the middle of the street.
And then she
That's
makes
what
a
you want me to
decision.
believe? He just stands in the middle of the
That's what this
street.
case is about. Then she makes a decision. She could have driven home. She could have broken up with him. They could have talked about it the next day. Or like knocking on the door, like Kaylee said, getting the last word. She doesn't drive away. She takes that 6,000-pound Lexus and she makes a decision. And the decision is that she steps on the gas after banging it into reverse. Before we talk about what happens next, I want to talk to you a little bit about the charges in this case. And I hate to digress, but it's important so we really understand what we're talking about here. I have no authority to talk about the law in this case. The Honorable Judge Cannoni will do that. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the charges. Don't rely on my interpretation of the law. It's the judge who has that special power. But I want to explain to you a couple things so when you think about what happens next, you can really assess the facts of this case with the charges against Ms. Reed. She is charged with second-degree murder. It sounds ominous, it is. It's a serious charge, second-degree murder. When most people think murder, they think shooting or stabbing somebody. It's natural to think that. Second-degree murder is different. It's not first-degree murder. I told you at the beginning of this case, I told you that we were not going to suggest or try to prove that Ms. Reed intended to kill John O'Keefe. That was never part of this case. We're not claiming that. I told you that we were not ever going to try to prove that she even intended to hit him. We never suggested
So what you trying
we
to
try
prove?
that, and we're not trying to prove that she intended to hit him. We're not. What we are obligated to prove and what we have proven from the evidence in this case of second-degree murder is that she intended an act, and that is putting the car into reverse and heading back towards John O'Keefe. She intended that act. The question then becomes, did her conduct create a clear, plain, strong likelihood of death? Late at night,
Clip. That's what I want to do.
dark,
Clip.
beginning to snow, under the influence of alcohol, knowing where she stopped and left him after an argument, heading back in reverse to the exact spot or right near where she left him at over 24 miles per hour, accelerating at over 75%. You need to ask yourself, are you convinced if somebody does that create a plain and strong likelihood of death? And if there's no doubt in your mind that she intended to hit that accelerator in reverse, and if that
There's a
conduct
doubt.
would create a
Doubt.
clear and
Doubt.
strong likelihood of death, then she is guilty of that crime. Whatever the label is, she would be guilty of that crime. Now think about this. Let me give you an analogy. If somebody, maybe a teenager, someone young, impulsive, is on a
I don't know how long he's been talking, but is it me? Is it me? If he, or is it he has yet to talk about the evidence of the collision? Is it me, or is he just saying a whole bunch of stuff and has yet to talk about the collision. Do I need to rewind? Did I miss it? Tell me if I missed it. He's saying a bunch of stuff, and none of it is talking about a collision. Okay, let's go.
A bridge, and they see cars going by, and they have a boulder, and they want to throw the boulder off. They're not looking to hurt anybody.
Now we talking about who knows what. Just words. He's just saying words.
Because they
what are
want
you
to
talking
see
about?
The car bridge.
Talk about some evidence.
And when they throw that boulder off the bridge, and it comes down and lands on the car, and there's somebody, passenger, child, anybody in that car.
Okay, last time, I promise. The problem is he's trying to do this off the top of his head. You see, he's not reading anything. I don't think that's good for lawyers to do in closing arguments. Write down your points, or at least your bullet points. That's why he's just talking, and I'm waiting for him to talk about something of some substance. Talked about something we heard in this trial. You're just talking.
And it then goes through the roof and kills the person in the car. Did they intend to kill that person? No, they were trying to have a thrill throwing the rock. Did they have the malice to want that person dead? No, they didn't. But that would be an example of second-degree murder. When you take a boulder and throw it off a bridge.
Boulders. We're talking about boulders.
And strong likelihood of death.
Collision anywhere.
In the midst of that tension and fight, after she drove away and was gone, disengaged, when she came back for the last word, in the darkness, the beginning of the snow, under the influence of alcohol, and decided to stop her Lexus, decided to put it in reverse, decided to accelerate 75% in the exact same direction of where she left him, and then hit him, and he died. I suggest to you
That doesn't even make sense, you guys.
Second-degree murder.
Where did he talk about any evidence?
The other
in this
charge,
trial?
operating under the influence of alcohol, manslaughter. It's different. It's a totally different and separate charge. Was she under the influence of alcohol? And then secondly,
he does have
did
a paper
she
over there.
operate her Lexus wantonly and recklessly in a way that would very likely result in serious injury?
You have everybody
When
saying
you're
she
under
did
the
not.
influence of alcohol and you drive a 6,000-pound Lexus in the heat of the moment at the direction of where somebody is, whether you intend to hit them or not, I submit to you that is wanton, it is reckless. And any reasonable person would think it's very likely that serious injury would result. It's not a matter of intending to kill. It's not a matter of intending to hit. It is the conduct of the operation and the risk that is created.
I can't stand
And
it.
so those two charges
Bothering
are two of
me.
the three. The three is leaving the scene, knowingly causing death. And we'll get to that. So now, sadly, we need to get back to 34 Fairview Road where we left. We know from the tech stream data that you drove 33 feet at least, because it only picks up a 10-second window. And when it starts to pick up the data, we know she's driving at a speed. So it's more than 33 feet. We just don't know.
You just
And
don't
then
know.
she comes
You
back,
just don't know
she comes to
nothing.
33 feet and 50 more. 80 feet. 80 feet.
Then
Over
tell
80
us how
feet.
she got home. Do you have the
Now,
route?
Nobody has ever suggested, even Dr. Welcher, when she collided with them. This data doesn't tell you collision. It's a 6,000-pound Lexus. It's a 216-pound man. It's not going to show a blip. It could have been in that 10-second window.
Doesn't even make
It could have been
sense.
2 seconds after. It could have been 4 seconds after. But it's in that pocket of time, and we know it. We know it because when you reconcile the data with the phone, that 20 seconds is in the same window of that 10-second window coming back. So even if it's a couple seconds later, 4 seconds later, whatever Mr. DeSorgo wants, he stops moving. John O'Keefe stops moving forever. Forever. Next slide 6, please. You'll get to see this more closely, and you can probably see it where you're sitting, but there's important data. Data doesn't lie. And you will see acceleration, 75%. You will see speed, 24 miles per hour backwards. You will see distance, over 80 feet. That's what you're going to see in this data on that night. Anger, although not necessary in any of these charges, anger can be inferred for somebody to come back that hard, that fast, that reckless, that obvious, likely to create a plain and strong likelihood of death.
No, I
That
did not
is a
see that.
story that can't be changed. Can't be attacked.
I did not see
Arkham.
that.
They did some crash test dummies. You know what else they do? Text stream data. There's nothing about that data that is uncertain. Nothing.
Yeah, because there was no
Take that
collision,
down,
so they
please.
don't care.
When Miss Reed hits John O'Keefe,
How long is he even talking? I want it
John
over.
O'Keefe.
I want it over.
We don't know if he went in the air a foot. We don't know if it was how much of a clip it was. We don't know if he stumbled back. But we know there's a collision. There's no doubt there's a collision because her taillight's all over the yard. It's all over the yard. And when he falls back and he hits the back of his head, his basal fracture, he's then lying there helpless. When Miss Reed leaves, she leaves behind tons of her taillight all over the yard.
47 pieces.
All over the yard. It's called debris field. And you've seen videos. You can't
On the
replicate
side.
exact contact. You can't because you need where the person was hit, how fast the person was going, but you know what happened because when you look at the debris field, when a light is broken, it's no different than what was on the front yard. It's no different.
We don't know what was on the front
She
yard.
leaves him behind. She leaves her taillight
Oh my
behind.
God. Oh my God. I can't. You guys, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not going to be able to do it. He is quite literally a master gaslighter. He will make you forget he'll make you think your reality is not your reality. We don't know what was on the front yard. You know why? Because nobody ever took a picture past the 4 or 5 pieces they found that one day. What are you talking about? There was a debris field. We don't know that. We just got to take y'all lying ass word for it. Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm going to lose my mind. The gaslighting of Hank Brennan needs to be taught. Do you know how much I probably control the world if I knew how to gaslight people like this?
She goes home, and on her way home, you know she's still angry. You know she's still angry because she starts leaving him voicemails. Slide 7, please. Healthcare starts at 12:31.
Healthcare.
12:32:04 to 12:32:12 is the data which is adjusted when you reconcile the clocks and the Alexis. 12:32:09 is when Mr. O'Keefe closes his phone after looking at Jen McCabe's text. 12:32:16 is his last steps. Mr. Disorder says that red range should move a little bit, 2 or 3 seconds. They can move it 4 seconds, 5 seconds. It doesn't matter. It's all in the same window. It doesn't change. We could have slide 10, please.
It's making me so upset.
Play that, please.
I don't like being gaslit. It's a pet peeve of mine. It'll make me feral.
Thank you.
Because again, you have to remember they want us to believe that nobody heard this or saw this.
You can't place that car where
And
it was
apparently
on
John
the
O'Keefe is
surface.
standing in the
You
middle of the road
can't.
waiting
Data
to be
doesn't tell
hit.
you that, but that tells you the movements of that car. Now, as John O'Keefe sadly lays on the ground, abandoned, you're going to have to ask yourself a question for charge number 3, leaving scene knowing somebody was injured and then died. You're going to have to ask yourself, is there evidence that Miss Reed knew that she had hit him? Don't need to prove it for murder 2. Don't need to prove it for OUI manslaughter. But for the 3rd charge, Commonwealth has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt she knew she hit him. We weren't there, but there was an eyewitness. There was a guide. And that eyewitness tells us that she knew. And that eyewitness is Caroline herself. She tells you that she knew. Could we have slide 8, please?
Could I have hit him? Did I hit him?
How could that have been? I mean,
I don't know what that could have been. It was howling wind. I had YouTube blasting on the stereo. And I thought, did he somehow try to flag me down, which was the reaction I was hoping to garner as I slowly pulled away from the house. Did he come out and maybe trip or bend over to pick up his cell phone and I ran over his foot and then he passed out drunk? I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him?
I'll never understand why she would get on somebody's show and say all that. That'll never make sense to me. That'll never make sense to me.
Fairview and left John behind. She didn't think he was mortally wounded. But she knew she hit him. She knew she hit him. And so when she made her way back home, not only did she leave debris field all over the front lawn, but she took evidence with her too. Hair, DNA on the taillight, and she drove back to John's house. And she started calling on the way back, 12:33, just a minute and a half later. And then her messages show her anger. You see, this was John's fault. This was John's fault. And her phone calls tell you about the tone and the destruction of that relationship.
I actually can't stand her.
That night, 53 phone calls, not one to 911. Not one to Jen McCain.
Who calls somebody 53 times and they think they hit him and he's lying on the side of the road?
Not one to a hospital.
Who does that? It's like he doesn't
Not
think
one
about the
to
rest of his
anybody
argument
but
when
him.
he's talking.
3 calls. Slide 12, please. Can you play voice no 1, please? The calls keep coming. Cell phone temperature, 72 degrees. He's been outside now, not moving, on that cold, hard ground with his cell phone under him. The warmth of his body.
I hate that she did that to me. I don't understand. And then I can't stand her.
As this temperature plummets and that cell phone battery is compromised,
Plummets is crazy.
so is John O'Keefe. And him and his cell phone alone.
Plummets
on
is
that
crazy.
yard.
Did anybody ever check what your phone is sitting there if you're not using it?
Ian Whiffen's taking a phone and putting it in a freezer, not a same analogy. The idea that means that John O'Keefe was in the house, absurd. 66 turns to 61, it's 12:53. 48 unanswered calls from the defendant. He's not in at a party, he's not wrestling with Brian Higgins, he's not in a fight. If he's in a fight, his cell phone would be moving. There'd be healthcare data, there'd be steps. If he got into the house
If he got
in
hit,
20 seconds,
there'd be healthcare data.
and his cell
Wouldn't the
phone
phone
found under
bounce?
his body the next day.
When your phone notice that?
And how would he get back outside? There would be more steps because this phone is working. The data is the data. There's nothing wrong with it. It's registering everything. The temperature, the movement. He doesn't go in any house. He can't go in any house. His phone never moves again. Voicemail number 3, please. Listen to this.
John, I'm the only fucking kid. Nobody knows what the fuck you are, you fucking pervert.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Nobody knows where you are. It is 12:59. John O'Keefe has been on that lawn for about 27 minutes. She hasn't called anybody else, hasn't spoken, has no information. Nobody's called her.
She don't got their
You'll see
number.
her
Didn't
phone
she have to
records.
get it from the niece?
And she says
It's like he
nobody
doesn't
knows
think
who you
about the
are.
rest of. He doesn't think about the rest of his argument.
She knows.
He doesn't think about the rest of his argument, and
knows.
it pisses me
Nobody
off.
does know where he is. Except her. except her. Why is she asking nobody knows who you are? She is starting to get panicked because she knows she hit him. I'm not suggesting she meant to kill him or for him to die, but she knows
He
she hit
irritates
him,
my
and now
spirit.
he's not responding, and she's getting nervous, and she's getting anxious, and she's leaving call after call after call. He's not answering. He's not calling back. He's not even picking up the phone. And we know what's happening at this point. Panic, drunken denial.
But
it's
that's
setting
just
in.
been his whole MO watching
And so then
stuff.
we see
It's
the
his whole MO was to
healthcare
respond
data
to the
from Miss Reed's
defense,
phone.
not
She
prove
doesn't
his own
move.
case, and that's his problem.
After a little after 1 o'clock. She could be sitting, she could have fallen asleep, but she doesn't move for a while. But she wakes up. She wakes up early the next morning. You can take that down, please. And when she wakes up, she doesn't call Jen McCabe and say, "Where's John?"
Why would she call Jen McCabe? She doesn't even have her
doesn't
number.
call
It doesn't make.
Brian Higgins has his number, has been texting with him. Hey, was John at a party with you?
I didn't even
Did you see John
respond
tonight?
to him. Why the hell would I be calling
She knows
Brian Higgins?
exactly
Oh,
where
he's
she
making
is,
me
and
so.
she's
The
frantic.
gaslighting
So she wakes
should be a
up
college
Kaylee,
course.
that young girl at the time, and she says she's panicked. She can't understand what she's saying. Call Jen McCabe. Call Jen McCabe. Why is she calling Jen McCabe? She calls Jen McCabe. You know what she doesn't say when she calls Jen McCabe? When did he leave the house? What happened last night? No. She calls and says, I left him at the waterfall.
According
I
to
left
Jen
him at the
McCabe.
waterfall.
Nobody
So now it's
believes
gone
Jen
from
McCabe, though.
Panicked to self-preservation. I left him at the waterfall. And Jen says, left him at the waterfall? We saw you in front of the house. Click.
This is why I wanted Alan Jackson to go more into the lies of these people. I wanted him to make it clear that these people are liars, because a lot of the Karen Reed is guilty people use these sort of facts to prove she is guilty, but they forget that they're coming from the mouth of a liar. They're coming from the mouth of a liar. I don't believe a word Jen McCabe says. Ever, period. If she tells me it's raining, I'm going to go look out a window.
Hangs up. Hangs up. So then she calls someone that she doesn't know very well. She calls Carrie Roberts. But now she has to pivot because someone has seen her in the exact spot that John will be found soon. Whether she's the first one there or somebody else, John will be found. Maybe Lucky missed him. It's a snowstorm. You can't see. But someone's going to find him at some point. So she calls Carrie Roberts. It's no longer she left him at the waterfall. She pivots. And she calls, Carrie, Carrie, Carrie. John's dead. I think he got hit by a plow. Why do you think she chose those words? Why did she choose those words?
Believes
Because
that.
she knew that there was a collision with a large motor vehicle, and she had to substitute her 6,000-pound Lexus for another big vehicle.
Who believes that?
Think
Who
she got
believes
hit
a
by
word
plow.
that Carrie Roberts
And
says?
so now we have the introduction
Or
of
Jen McCabe.
Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts. Phone calls that they probably never, ever wanted. A worse nightmare to get a call like that. For what's going to happen, what they're going to see, what they'll never be able to forget. But because the defendant is John O'Keefe's girlfriend, they wake up in the middle of the night in a blizzard out of their kindness, their loyalty, their devotion to John O'Keefe. And when she calls them and tells them that she wants them to come out, this soccer mom with a perfectly normal life gets drawn into this
me
whole
off with the
farce.
soccer mom.
And she answers
Oh,
that
he's
call.
trying to make me mad. He's trying to
She
make me
gets
mad.
out of bed. The spirit and kindness she displays,
He's trying to piss me off.
put
Oh
herself
my
in that
God.
position because someone
The
asked
soccer
for
mom's going to
help,
send me through the
because
roof.
that's what good people do. Kerry Roberts didn't know Jen McCabe. They both knew John. They met each other 1 or 2 years before. Kerry Roberts separately at that time. Answers the call. Gets out of bed. Drives to go help. Because they have a common denominator, a common bond. John O'Keefe. And so you hear and see at 5:07 the defendant leaves Meadows. She leaves. And Kaylee is behind waiting. And you see her back up And Judd Welch just showed you all of those demonstrations where you could see the unsettled snow in the back, and after the bump, you can see the pieces missing, no taillight. There's no taillight on the ground, all the white snow. There's no crack, there's no break. It's a nudge. It's a nudge. But the taillight has already been broken because when you look at the video, not one little piece, it's still framed, little angle with the light, the brakes wrong. You take a look, you'll be able to slow it down. You'll see the exact same piece is missing. Because it's back at Fairview. That's why it's missing. It's not there, it's back at Fairview. And then she leaves at 5:07. She gets to Jen McCabe's about, 5:35. 28 minutes. It's about a 10-minute ride. Where did she go in 28 minutes? Where did she go? We don't know. We don't have data for that. But we know when she gets to Jen McCabe's house, she is panicked, frantic, out of her mind, screaming, waking everybody up. Jen McCabe comes down, can't understand her, going out to the car to try to console her. Why is she so frantic? Why can't she speak? Why can't she say a word? Because John went out and had a drink and fell asleep on a couch? Because John would maybe be cheating on her? What is causing this
trying to drive me
extraordinary
crazy.
duress? Did she stop somewhere on the way by? Did she just see death? Kerry Roberts comes, take charge kind of person. She pulls him behind, she sees the broken taillight in Jen McCabe's driveway, and she decides she's gonna commandeer this.
Except-
We're going back to Meadows.
except-
You're gonna follow me,
All right,
leave the
I'm gonna be
car,
quiet.
I'll drive. At this point, Jen and Kerry don't know each other. They've only met once. And they go back to Meadows. They obviously don't find John because he's back at 34 Fairview. And then they start their way towards 34 Fairview. They start driving towards 34 Fairview, and they're looking. And you heard from Kerry Roberts, Jen McCabe, they're looking out the window, they can't see a thing. The snow, the blizzard, the weather, the darkness, they can't see anything. And they're driving and driving, and they decide they're going back to 34 Fairview, and this is remarkable. This is remarkable. When they start their way past towards 34 Fairview, they get close. And when they get close, they can see nothing. But the defendant screams, "Stop, let me out." And they look around and they say, "What? Let me out, let me out." She does not see John O'Keefe. She knows where he is.
She does
She knows
not see him. She
exactly
just
where
jumps
he
out the
is.
car and
She
hopes
knows
that he's
where to
still
find
there.
him. She knows where to expect to find them because she knows where she left him.
Okay, that makes absolutely no sense.
She tells us. Slide 13, please.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Driving in Jen's in the passenger seat. And I've described this to everyone, so you've probably heard this before, but John looked like a buffalo on the prairie. It was just a lawn and a heap that it wasn't a bush or a hydrant or a dog. It was a weird shaped lump at that time in those elements. And I was looking to find him on the side of the road. I was expecting I'd find him.
Thank you.
Let me tell you why that's a masterclass in gaslighting. Because he's trying to make what she just said seem like I knew he was going to be right there at 34 Fairview on the side. Like, that's not the same thing. But the master gaslighting. The master gaslighting. Teach a class, Hank Brennan. You got another stream of income. It's actually going to drive me crazy, but some people might love it. If I could gaslight people the way Hank Brennan does, I'm telling you, I'd be a millionaire by now. I'd be a millionaire by now. I take over the world like Pinky and the Brain.
A weird shaped lump in a blizzard, and you equate that to John O'Keefe? A weird shaped lump,
Yeah.
not like a bush, and that is John O'Keefe? She tells us she knows where she left John O'Keefe. And so they go over to Mr. O'Keefe. Kerry.
No, it should make you think why nobody
And
else saw
Karen.
him there.
And she's upset, there's no doubt. I am not for a second trying to deprive her of the unrest and the trauma that is happening at this scene. Doesn't change what happened before, but I appreciate the trauma. And they're trying to help him. And guess what happens when they first move him around 603, 604? Ian with him. Data. The cell phone battery gets the cool air, presses on the battery, the cell phone battery drops. Healthcare data, he has not moved since that 22nd, hasn't moved. They start shaking him, you're going to see, when you look at the records, that healthcare data starts to move. He's been there all night. All night. Nobody else. Her. And so when they try to help him, she says something that is remarkable. She says, there's a piece of glass stuck in his nose.
In the opposite side of his nose.
Plucks it out. And she says when she plucks it out, blood spurts out. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. Remember that. Piece of glass, pulls it out, blood spurts out. That's what she says. As they try to help John, Jen is calling 911. They would like you to believe there's a conspiracy. That the glass that's found in Mr. O'Keefe's body is somehow from inside the Albert house.
No, nobody said that. That's not what they said.
Glass.
The gaslighting is going to drive me crazy, y'all.
You'll hear in the clips, if we don't play it, you'll have all
The
clips
gaslighting
with
is going
you.
to drive me
Talks
crazy.
about the fact that he took her glass. He took the glass. She says it.
Nobody says
So
that.
the Albert house.
Nobody said that. I'm telling y'all, y'all want to make me mad. Y'all want to make me so mad. Start repeating my words incorrectly. Nobody said that. What they were insinuating was you didn't know at the time where the glass came from. No, the gaslighting is going to make me climb up a wall like The Exorcist. I'm not going to be able to take it. Do not. Oh, I need to calm down. I'm an adult. Okay, let's continue.
They don't need to give glass. He already has the glass with the straw that's later found on the street, by the way. That's what happens on an impact. Things move. The glass comes with him, lands near his body. Debris field moves past him. Shoe, hat, straw. Jen McKay makes a call to her sister, and they say because it registers 29 seconds, a Sallyport record is not the same as a call detail record. There is no evidence there was a conversation. No lights go on. There's no conspiracy. You can call somebody. It can ring. It can go to voicemail. They have no evidence, none, that there's a conversation between Jen McCabe, the person who was ripped out of her sleep to come help, and her sister for some grand conspiracy. And so what happens next is traumatic. Kerry Roberts and Jen McCabe see their best friend prone, lifeless, on the ground. And they're living this torment because somebody brought them into this.
And they're telling her to
When
shut
they're
up,
trying to help
and Jen
John,
McCabe is calling her
There is
sister.
not
Great,
one
awesome.
suggestion
Makes
from
sense to
anybody
me.
that John ever went into that house. There's no reason to go into that house because John was never in the house. Not one time does anybody say, what time did he leave? I thought he went in there. Not even a whisper of it because it never, ever happened.
You only talk to one person.
When they find their friend John, he's not 20
How
feet
long
off
has
the
he been
side of
talking?
the
Somebody
road.
give me a time step. I'm not going to be able to take it much
Mr.
longer.
Rentschler or Mr. Wolf thinks. He's right there by the
And
side
jump
of the road,
off the
close
building.
by the curb. Could we have slide 14, please? You can see there's Kerry Roberts' vehicle, and then on the left, you can see where they're working. Right off the road, that's not 20 feet. That is a cliff, a stumble, and a fall. And remember, when John O'Keefe fell, there wasn't snow. It was just the beginning of a dusting. It was the cold, hard ground. Remember what Dr. Isaac Wolf told us about cold, hard ground? Causes this type of injury all the time. All the time.
Yep.
If
We don't
could go
say
to
drunk people
slide
fall.
16, please. Remember the glass in the nose? The glass in the nose. See on the bottom left, that's where the Canton Police Department found the glass that he took from the car, from the waterfall. And then exhibit 195.
Oh, thank
matching
God.
glass.
Oh, thank God.
February
Hold on. I'm going to
3rd,
lose
the
my
matching
mind.
piece of glass was found on the street. The matching piece of glass, the glass that was found with Mr. O'Keefe, was found on the street.
Where's the glass on the
Didn't fall
bumper,
back.
Hanky Spanky?
8-10 feet from the road, it broke, and then it shattered and went to the street. I would suggest to you it broke at the time of the collision, and he carried the glass with him, leaving the evidence behind, a trail to memorialize what happened to him that night.
Are you telling me?
Straw, I asked you to take a look at that picture and leaving the waterfall at 12:12, the black straw in the drink on the street.
Oh,
Collision.
okay. All right. Is he saying that John O'Keefe got hit by a car and held on to a piece of the glass until he fell? I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. He needs to hurry up because I'm going to jump off a bridge. Meanwhile, everybody and their mama just came from the waterfall. Whose black straw is that? Nobody. I'm going to need some type of sedation if I have to listen to Hank Brennan gaslight me anymore. It's going to require some type of D-rugs. Or I'm not going to be able to take it.
Glass, nose, straw, back, hits his head. Could you play the clip on the left, please? 59.
So when John got out of the car at Brian Albert's house, he took my full vodka soda, which is sitting in the cup holder.
169, please.
So John's laying there, his left and his right, and I approached John from the left. That's where the street is. And he had a piece of glass, like perched on his nose, like just wedged like a splinter would be. And it just pulled it, and as soon as I pulled it, it just gushed blood down his face.
Thank you.
Gushed blood down his face and squirted out. It's
911's
two
called by
different
Jen
things.
McCabe. She's not hiding from anybody. She's trying to help. She's bringing attention to the situation. And when 911 comes, we have first responders. These people are heroes. Some of them, you've heard from some of them, they were born to help people. That's what their life is about. The detail on all their mechanics, getting to work 2 hours early to know the blizzard so that you're there on time. So
He's trying to piss me off. I think his personal responsibility is to piss me off today.
Our community. Mr. Nuttall, this is what he does. He rushes
Mr. Nuttall,
to go help. He's the first person
that
on his
liar.
knees. He doesn't know this person from anybody. But to him, it's another human being. This is his passion. Katie McLaughlin, first responder. This is not just a profession, it's her life. Yes, she knows Caitlin Albert. Do you think she went there that night at a party and set up a murder and came back? And so
No.
they tell you what happens at the scene. Some things hard to remember, some things people will never forget. When you're in a traumatic incident, sometimes it's something you'll never, ever forget. And Timothy Nuttall remembers speaking to the defendant. I hit him.
Except
Remember, he's on his knees.
at a different
What
time
happened?
than McLaughlin.
I hit him.
This is
I
why
hit him.
I wanted This is why I wanted Jackson to go into a little bit more about the lies and the misrepresentations, because I knew big part of Hank Brennan's argument is going to be I hit him, and he needed to elaborate on how they said that at two different times.
She is now coming to terms with the moment. Her fear is realized. She hit him, she clipped him, she didn't think he was mortally wounded, she panicked, she can't come to terms with it, so she has to bring people with her to face it, and now she's facing the reality of what she had done. And her emotion is overwhelming. I hit him. She speaks to Miss McLaughlin. I hit him. Not did I hit him, could I hit him, perhaps I hit him, that was earlier. Now, she's recognizing what she did. I hit him.
And nobody wrote it down, and nobody took her to jail.
Nobody
took her to jail.
Adverse, or inconsistent, or inconvenient is a
Nobody
liar,
took her to jail.
or a perjurer, or in on a conspiracy. Or is it that these good people who went there for a total stranger to do their duty to help happen to remember that she admitted what she had done.
Happen to
I know
remember.
that doesn't reconcile with
Oh
the
God.
boogeyman Proctor and the bad
Oh,
government. I know it
God.
doesn't reconcile with no DNA on this piece of that piece. I know it doesn't reconcile with everybody
off my
setting up
screen.
the girl. I know that doesn't reconcile. But the reality
Get them off
is,
my screen.
you have independent, core people who hear her say, I hit him.
And nobody writes it down, and nobody takes her to jail.
And the attempt is to portray everybody as a liar. But you don't have to rely just on these good people, although you should. You should. You don't have to, because we have a guide, and it's Karen Reed. Slide 17.
So I must have said this. Did I have, I always said I hit him, but did I really say this many times as law enforcement's claiming I said it?
Thank you. I know it doesn't fit the theme, the theory, the story, but she tells you herself. She endorses those good people exactly what they had heard. She tells you herself she hit him. It's undeniable, it's unmistakable, it's inconvenient. But the truth has a way of seeping up to the daylight. It can be oppressed and suppressed and pushed down and covered and twisted, but it rises. It rises. And it is not a coincidence. There's no coincidence that Mr. Nuttall and Miss McLaughlin hear exactly that.
Except at two different times.
And Jen McCabe, when she's sitting next to or standing next to Miss McLaughlin, she tells you she saw or heard the same thing. Remember what happened to her on the stand when she had the audacity to say, I heard her say it? What happened to her? This woman who never even wanted to leave her home that day, pulled out into a storm.
I know you're
sees
not
her
going to talk
best
about
friend
what happened
dead.
to somebody on the stand.
What happened when she had the audacity to say
Gaslighting
that?
of Jake Brennan should be studied.
And now we know that the defendant herself said the same thing.
It needs to be studied.
And the funny
what
thing,
happened to
ironic
her.
thing is, you will see in a photo when Miss McLaughlin, firefighter, was speaking to
Must
the
be the
defendant,
time drift.
Miss McCabe was next to her.
I
Miss
want him to
McCabe
stop.
was trying to protect her, trying to shut her up. Don't talk. You're upset. Stop saying crazy things. The villain of the story was trying to help the defendant,
According to
from
her
incriminating
words.
herself. The irony.
Y'all, I can't take it. I can't take it. I wish I had
Can you
eyelashes.
Slide 9,
pulled.
please. This is the battery temperature. You didn't have a chance to look at it. If it wasn't so
We didn't have a
tragic,
chance to look at it.
it's
What are you talking about?
It is interesting if you like data. The 29, 12, 13, they're leaving the waterfall 82 degrees, 12:22. In the car, 77 degrees, 12:37. About 3.5 minutes after the defendant collides with John O'Keefe, it's starting to go down to 72, 12:45, 66, 12:53, 61. And you see it drop and steady off at 1:36. Remember, cell phone battery under him. John O'Keefe either
Right, so it should be freezing.
or he's fast. And the blood's still warm either way under him. Doesn't move again until 6:06. It drops down 7 degrees because the woman are pulling on him. The cold air is hitting the battery. What happens?
So in seconds, it drops.
You're going to see
13
the video. You've
degrees.
seen it, still
But you
photos.
want me to
Trevor Roberts
believe.
goes over, picks up the phone.
I need to calm down. I
She
hear
puts it in her
dogs.
pocket, and then 20 minutes later, the next reading, the temperature rises. That's not convenient. That's not a coincidence. That's fact. That's data. And then the phone is passed, put in a warm environment, and it raises up.
Raises up to what?
6:15. How can someone conspire to pick up a phone on the side of the yard that was under Mr. O'Keefe's body at 6:15 and know the battery temperature was then going to rise? Not only did the battery temperature rise, when you look at the healthcare data.
Oh, I hate that he says
6:15, she picks
healthcare
up the
data.
phone, you know what happens to the healthcare data, right? It starts to move. It's data. It's data.
I hate that he says healthcare data.
So, while they're going through this duress, the defendant asked Jen McCabe for yet another favor. Look up hypothermia. Find out how long.
Is he
it takes
over
someone
his
to die in a
time?
cold. And
He's
there's
over
Miss
his time,
McCabe
right?
in her winter
He's
jacket,
gotta be.
soccer mom, trying to help.
And
She
she's
has
just letting
MS,
him.
her hands aren't working, she's trying to type in. But what's happening during that time? It's a frantic scene. She tells you that. The defendant then wants to run back to the ambulance, so she goes with
She's
her.
just
never
letting him.
finishes
She's
or
not stopping
completes
him.
The input.
He's got to be over his time now.
And then she tries it again. At 6:23.
Remember, she
at
stopped Lally.
6:24. That's what this woman did that night, that morning. Not only for her
I'd
friend,
stand up.
for her. For her.
She stopped
That's
Lally.
what she did.
And I
And
would stand
what happens
up.
to her after?
Excuse me, because if we got more
Because
time,
the
give me my
timestamp,
give me my
when you
minutes.
when you open the timestamp,
But he does what he
it's at the
wants.
time it's
He
open,
does
and
what
she's
he
bed at
wants in her
2:27 looking
courtroom.
up Hockomock sports because she is so interested in the kids' sports, and that timestamp stays open. And she goes to that tab the next morning when she puts in how long to die in cold. And that is being portrayed that she's in a conspiracy. She gets vilified as a murderer, a soccer mom who came to help. It took Ian Whiffen 5 minutes to show you a live demonstration on how simple that works. But she's not deleting anything. Jessica Hyde told you it's automatic deletions over time. You user can't delete that information. That's not a click and swipe like the good Dr. Wolf from Arca knows how to do. This
Thanks,
can't
Tammy
be
Lynn, for
erased.
becoming a member.
But
He
they
does
still
what he
hold on
wants.
to this. As they argue to you and all the injustices that have been.
He doesn't even seem like he's wrapping up. He doesn't even feel like he's wrapping up. He does what he wants in this courtroom, and it pisses me off so bad. Because I guarantee you, had Alan Jackson went 5 seconds over his closing, she would have said something to him. He's got to be well over at this point, and he doesn't care. And that's why he said, I'll take whatever the defense gets, because he knew he was going to do what he wanted to do anyway. He knew that. Oh my God.
Done. They tell you, they want you to believe, or take a flyer on the fact that she looked up how long to die in the cold at 2:27. It is an absolute contrary to the science. There's no basis to support it, but they stand here in front of you. Why? Because every time they say something like
He's
that,
not even
you look
wrapping
the other
up.
way. Don't look at her. Look the other way. 2:27. Look the other way. Don't look at what she did. Former Trooper Proctor,
Yes, we're
look
good.
the other way. Don't look at her. Every time they make those, oh, she got the glass from inside the Alberts, maybe in the basement. Look the other way. Don't look the other way. Look at the facts.
Isn't it
Look at the
ironic
data, and it all
that
leads
that
to
seems
one
to be
person.
the
There's no
Commonwealth
grand conspiracy.
argument?
It leads to one person.
Just to look the other way.
defendant. And it's not just the data and facts. It's her
Isn't
herself.
it ironic?
Let's talk about.
Let's talk
Mr.
about
Proctor.
this man is
You are-
not even wrapping up. Somebody give me the minutes. Somebody give me the minutes. Somebody go figure out how long he's been talking and why she's allowing it. She stopped Lally in the middle of a sentence last time. He does what he wants. And it's not fair. Somebody go figure out how long he's been talking, because I know it's over an hour and 15 minutes. I know it.
Invoked with this emotion early in the opening that this is a cancer. That's a tough word. Trying to evoke that primal reaction of disgust. I'm not saying you shouldn't be disgusted by the text messages. You should. I should. They're not defensible. I don't stand here and defend impropriety. I don't. But that doesn't change the physical evidence, the scientific evidence, and the data. He was terminated. He paid a penalty. He was held responsible for what he did. He should have been. He should have been. But that doesn't get a free pass. That doesn't change the facts. It doesn't change the physical evidence. It doesn't change the science. It's unfortunate. It's distasteful. It's dishonorable. Remember, Trooper Buchanan was asked, was the investigation with honor and integrity? And he said it was. Was Trooper Proctor's effort honor and integrity? And he said it was integrity. But he never said honor. That's a man of honor. Military service, dedicated to his country, highest level of clearances to the President of the United States.
He literally
now
does what he
state trooper.
wants.
He would not
He
say
does what he wants, and
that
it's
Trooper
not
Proctor
fair.
was honorable. Because he wasn't. He wasn't. But that does not change. It doesn't create a conspiracy. Doesn't invent a dog. It doesn't make somebody in a house something they're not. It just doesn't. When you read those
It's not
text
fair.
messages, they're hard to look at. It's unfair. It's unfair. And if there's a penalty more than being fired, well, maybe that penalty would be deserved. But it has nothing to do with the justice in this case. It just doesn't. There's not one piece of evidence, not one, that we can look at and say, this
fair.
was tampered with. This was planted. This was distorted. Remember when we introduced the taillights at the beginning? I didn't introduce 3 of the taillights, but then the defense did, so I put them in. Those were taillights that were only found by Trooper Proctor. I did not put that evidence in. Understanding those text messages and appreciating the disdain one might have for his comments. Not that
Yeah,
there's any
because
evidence of
nobody
tampering.
cares,
Not that
Tammy.
there's
Like,
any
shut
evidence that it
up.
was not true. But
Nobody
I didn't put that
cares.
evidence before you.
Nobody cares what he's
because
talking
we
about.
need Trooper Proctor.
They want him to stop talking, and he's been talking for so long.
Proctor to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's why I didn't introduce that evidence to you. Now, there's been a lot of talk about planting of taillight. We know the taillight wasn't planted.
Really,
because Trooper
Helena?
Buchanan and Mr. Proctor did not go down to Dighton to see Miss Reed until later in the
Really?
afternoon. We
That's
know from
interesting.
The 507 video, we've seen that. We know the taillight was already missing when she's leaving the driveway.
Facts don't matter to
When
Hank.
the good Canton police detectives went to do a
Only the way he
wellness check to care
interprets
for
the
those young
facts.
children, and they went to the house inadvertently, they didn't even know it. The dash cam captured the back of the car.
He's
The
not
taillight
even
cap
wrapping
snow
up. He's
is
not
missing.
even
It's
saying in
already gone. It can't
conclusion.
be planted.
What is
At
the
this point,
defense
Trooper
doing?
Proctor's still in his
I'd be
pajamas.
looking
He's
at the
not even on
judge doing
tape, not even on the
this.
scene. He's been near the car. And then the
'Cause if
Dighton
we got
videos
more time, we got more
themselves, you
time.
just take it at an angle and it moves, but if you get the right angle, you can see.
If we got more
Listen,
time, we got more
it's gone.
time.
Can we have slide 18,
He
please?
does what he wants. He's still showing slides.
507. You can play any angle you want. If you look at this angle, it's gone.
I don't know how long he's been talking, but I know it's longer than an hour and
Okay.
15 minutes.
Already gone. You know where it is? 34 Fairview Road, on the Wheatfield. January 29, 2022, 823. Look at the right-hand side. Look at the left-hand side. It's packed with snow. It's gone. It's gone. And
That doesn't
if
even
you
look
do videos, it's a different angle, a little smaller, but if you play that and watch the lenses go up and down and slow it down, you'll see it expands. It's gone.
The light is
So when
on.
you have
Idiot.
Dighton Officer Barrows come in here and try to tell you what he saw in the Sallyport, couldn't have been it. You gotta ask yourself, what interest does he have coming in here in this case?
What interest does he have coming?
A lot of attention on this case, a lot of people watching.
Not.
Comes
Do
in
you do not go
of
after
course,
Officer Barrow?
Driving all the way out to the defense attorney's hotel to meet in the conference room so he can get a subpoena.
I will
He
fight you.
spends 2 hours driving up and back so that he can conveniently get a subpoena that tells him to appear, which he could have got by fax or in the mail.
Or because he's the only
And so
one
when
in
he
this
comes
case
in,
with
what he says is, that's
integrity.
absolutely not what I saw. Absolutely not. And then he claims at the last time he testified, he had made the same statement. I showed him his transcript. And did you see the redness creep over his face? He never said this before. In fact, he testified to the opposite. And so he sits on the stand with a new story after a meeting. We don't know why. But then I show him that bottom right photo with the snow, with it missing. And I say, is this the way it looked? It's, of course, before the snow melts out in the Sallyport so that you can see it unexposed. And he says, yes, he had to agree. This taillight was gone. There's no boogeyman. There's no plant. There's no Higgins at the Sallyport. There's no one tearing out pieces. In fact, remember I played you a clip and you'll have it where the defendant says, I was picking out pieces that was crashed in, the bulb was showing, when I was showing Kerry and Jen, when they went back to Meadows. If you don't remember, listen to that clip, you'll hear it. Unfortunately, there's no ring video when they go back to Meadows. There's a ring
Unfortunately.
video when she leaves, there's no ring video when she gets back. And so now when we're trying to look the other way, we want to find a dog bite. So enter Dr. Russell. Dr. Russell.
How is he still speaking? How is he still speaking? And this is what he's going to go through every single one of the defense witnesses. And it's what Alan Jackson should have done. But I know Alan Jackson, they have PTSD from this judge. They have PTSD from this judge. He kept his argument at exactly an hour and 15 minutes. This man has been speaking at least an hour and a half now, at least. And he's not even wrapping up.
Russell, according to her, nice woman, nice doctor, very accomplished. I respect that. She's the only dog expert in the world.
Very passionate.
No idea what that expertise means.
We don't have any choice but to be
job.
passionate.
She wants to be here, her profile, but she can't explain the methodology. What are you looking for in a dog bite? She can't tell us. It starts a year ago that it's claws, it's teeth, and then it's claws, then it's teeth, then it's I don't know. And then when you look at each of the different parts of the abrasions, she says, well,
nobody said I don't know.
I can't tell if I look at each one of them, but all together it's a dog bite. It's a dog attack. That is the masterful expertise that the defense has bragged about bringing in. Dr. Russell telling
I don't
you,
remember Lally going way over. I remember her stopping him right
bite.
at the hour
She
mark.
has never been in a forensic
saying,
situation
"Time,
where
Mr.
she
Lally."
looked at a wound and identified it as a dog bite before. This is the first time, the only time she's ever done it. And what she says is these are not punctures. Punctures means it goes into the skin, a wound. There's no punctures. And she's sure because she's an expert, so you should rely on her because
he didn't
she's
care what
coming
time
in
the defense had.
saying she's an expert and she's being presented. Yet, after saying there's no punctures, Dr. Laposada
He didn't
comes
care
in,
what time the
and she
defense
sees
had. He knew he was
punctures
going to do
everywhere.
what the hell he wanted to do
It's an
anyway.
animal attack.
It's
a
not
dog.
fair, you
What is
guys.
it?
It's just not
No
fair.
method, no methodology, no history of this, no prior testimony that we know of other than arbitrarily what she says. And she says the exact opposite of Dr.
An hour and
Russell. Why is
25
that?
minutes.
How does that happen? So
And he's
obviously,
not even
there is
wrapping
no
up.
science to looking at an abrasion and saying where it came from.
It's
They
not
give
even
us no
wrapping up.
detail. They give us nothing that we
He's
should rely on.
not
They
even wrapping up. Juxtapose that with the fact that Alan Jackson asked for an hour and a half. And she said, no, I'll give you 15 minutes. And then he's taking an hour and a half. What could Alan Jackson have done in his closing with an extra 15 minutes? Walk down each one of those witnesses. When you have zero worries, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He does what he wants. He does what he wants. That's why he said whatever the defense wants, because I don't care. I don't care how long the defense got. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to say what I want, and you're not going to stop me. Is she up there asleep? Because it looks, if she doesn't say anything to him, it makes the jury feel like the defense just didn't have anything else to say. He's not even wrapping up. And he's already at an hour 25. The defense asked for an hour 30.
Pick each other. It's just to get you to look the other way. And so we have now the issue
Exactly.
of
They should address this later. They should address it
Over
now.
and over again, there's no
Because
collision.
she won't care later.
There's no collision. There's no collision.
You didn't
And they had a
object.
number of
You didn't
witnesses
object
come
at the
in
time.
to try to say that. And they point to Dr. Scorbello,
I would say
who
objection,
works
Your
at the
Honor.
medical
Can we
examiner's
approach? He's
office.
been talking
She
for 2
tells you
hours.
that she doesn't see injuries consistent with a collision. She's looking at this
He's
case for
going
90
through
days.
every one of their
90
witnesses.
days. The
He's-
evidence in this case did not stop. It continued for 2 years.
I need to
She
calm
knows
down.
nothing about the data, nothing about the black box,
Was
nothing
it too early
about
for a drink?
the interviews of Miss Reed.
5
She doesn't know
o'clock
about the
somewhere.
DNA. She doesn't know about the shards in the arm or in the clothes. Strike that in the clothes. She knows nothing about that. So in 90 days, she didn't see any lower body injuries. She didn't see any lower extremity injuries, which are very common in car collisions. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen because she, in 90 days, saw a fraction of the information. A fraction.
That's not
And we
true.
know
You asked
now-
her about all the info, and she said,
Argument back and forth for days
my
about lower body
opinion doesn't
injuries.
change.
The suggestion is a car accident can affect everybody differently depending on the angle, the scope, the
Exactly.
speed.
Here
Some
comes
people can
drama.
get plowed by a
Tomatoes,
car, have
tomatoes,
no
throwing
injuries. Some people
tomatoes.
get touched lightly and
Boo!
have more injuries. And there was the debate about no lower body injuries. Well, ARCA dispelled that in their dummy test that you can have a collision with no lower body injuries. They did that for us. Thank you. And so the idea that at the time in 90 days that she doesn't have enough information to say consistent
What
with
are
a
you
car
talking about? They
accident
rolled over
doesn't
the
mean there's
dummy's
no car
foot.
accident.
What are you saying? No lower body injuries. He rolled over his foot.
Let me talk a little bit about Archer. I don't want to waste too much time with them.
He's still talking. He's
What?
not even
Expert.
rapping.
Who's supposed to come to you? They're not the arbiter of truth.
He runs that
Their
courtroom.
opinions weigh
The
no
Honorable
more than
Hank
yours.
Brennan.
Common sense
She has no
has
control
more
over
value
this
than
man.
an expert's opinion.
It
Their
is
job
not
is to assist you, to explain
fair.
what their expertise is, so
It's
that it's
simply
a tool
not
for
fair.
you, so that you can make a decision.
But where's
That's
the defense? What are they doing?
We heard words like confirmation bias, objectivity. Mr. Wolf got on the stand, and before we even started, you have to ask yourself, what expert has a court order for text messages and then deletes the text messages? What expert? What
That's not what
objective
happened.
Expert uses Signal, an encrypted app, to communicate about the case. Never used it before, hasn't used it since.
Exactly. And that's going to be her
And so
argument.
when he did
You
his
didn't object
test,
at the time.
He used a
That's
lower
going to be her
weight arm.
argument. And I don't understand why they're not
Wasn't
objecting.
trying to bash him, wasn't
I
trying
don't
to insult
understand
him.
why they're not
tried to get him
objecting.
to recognize that a 9.38 pound arm is less weight.
I think they have
John
PTSD
O'Keefe's
with this
metric,
judge, but I
which
don't
would be
care.
11.8. That's
I don't
all. And
care.
because the
You're
lighter
not
arm
even
takes more
stopping
speed to
him.
create the same damage. I don't know science, I don't know math very well, but that's basic. It's basic. And he fought me over and over again. Did he seem objective that he was trying to help you? Because Dr. Rexel came in the next day and said, well, you have to adjust for that. That's all I asked him for an hour about adjusting, just like Judge Welch
No,
adjusted.
he said he did
He
it. Oh my
adjusted.
God.
And he tried to talk to me like I was making something up. His own colleague had to admit it. Now, it's funny, he admitted it before he got through his credentials. No sequestration order violations. Nobody was coaching him, but he knew enough to come in at the beginning and get right on that point. And speaking of sequestration, remember Dr. Russell on her limo ride over? If Brendan asks you a question, make sure you ask for a transcript. Impede the progress. Slow down the questioning. Interfere. Sequestration
Interfere?
orders is so there's fundamental fairness for all witnesses, not just some. And so
Yo,
what
I'm
happens with
gonna-
Dr.
I'm
Rexel,
gonna
we don't
lose my
know,
mind.
but we do know he
I'm
comes
gonna
in here
lose
and
my
he tells
mind.
you that
I'm
he was
gonna
not getting
lose
information
my
that was helping
shit
him the last time
soon.
he testified. He insisted.
I'm gonna lose my
I
shit
asked him
very
5
soon.
times, was he getting information that
The
would help him in his
gaslighting I can't
testimony?
take. It's a
Not from
pet
the defense.
peeve for
Former
me.
employer
Okay,
said,
it
no,
makes
no,
me
no. And at the end of
incredibly
the examination,
irrationally
he gives his
angry.
transcript and it's yes, yes, yes. And he tells us that he's independent and objective. I asked him
Somebody give me
about
some
a lunch.
breathing
Not a big
techniques
deal.
because I'm
Just
gonna
ask
lose
him
my
about
shit.
it. And he says, I have a sandwich and I stand in the corner until I remind him that we got video footage from a documentarian and he's in one of the scenes. And then things change. So when you talk about objectivity and who to trust, they can come in and say, Judge Welcher said this and that. It doesn't make it so. Judge Welcher, Dr. Welcher, never in any report, in any presentation, in any testimony to you, ever suggested this is how it happened. This was how his arm was. This is how his feet was. He was trying to show whether or not the orientation. Could this happen with the angle, with the height? That's all that test was. It was no more. But what they do is they reposture it, repackage it, and say it means this when it doesn't, and we're going to show you why it's not that, therefore we win. That's all that is. It's semantics. Judge Welcher, Dr. Welcher, never suggested that. And his work on text stream data, unassailable.
Oh, stop.
And so what we have, inevitably, is we have a timeline that never moves, data that never changes, physical evidence that can't be put in that spot without a collision. We have, inevitably, proof, without any doubt, that on January 29, 2022, Ms. Reed was with Mr. O'Keefe, and she got drunk. She drank.
Let
She was
subscribers
2-3
into the
times
chat
over
now,
legal limit.
guys.
And they went to a party, an after party, and they were fighting.
How is he still talking?
They were
And
fighting.
why are they
There
not
was a
saying anything?
Relationship in decline, and he got out of the car, and he had a
How
brief
is he still
window of life
talking?
left.
And why are they not saying
But when
anything?
he got out, and she drove away, she couldn't let it go.
I don't get it. I don't
Got
get it.
drunk, she hit him. She left him to die. It's that simple.
I don't get it.
We don't know exactly how this collision happened, but we have.
You don't know
a good
where it
idea from the
happened.
physical
You don't know
evidence,
when it
and we
happened.
know that it happened. Can someone have a collision without lower body injuries? Could I have slide 19, please? You bet they can.
You roll over his foot.
We don't know if this is the body position. We don't know if this is the exact speed, but what it tells us, this is viable. Look at the debris field. Look at his turn. Remember his sneaker on that curb? They got lodged
Look
against the sneaker.
at his foot.
So Keith then falls back, hits his head, counter coup, left to die.
Oh. Yeah, I'm getting a headache.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt what happened that night. There is no
He's
doubt who did it.
still
You have a very
talking.
difficult task ahead of you when you consider the evidence and you consider the law. Very difficult. There are 3 charges.
He's
There is second-degree murder.
still
Ms.
talking.
Reed, when she chose to drive back at Mr. O'Keefe in that night with a 6,000-pound Lexus, in that anger, 75%, whether she meant to hit him or not, didn't mean to kill him, she hit him. Strengths, it is a plain and strong likelihood of death. You would never get back down your driveway if your kids were at the end of the driveway.
The pause
You'd
put us
kill
behind.
somebody.
My bad.
You would never do it because you would expect, if you drove at them at that speed, that someone would die. That's second-degree murder. OUI manslaughter, she's drunk, she was reckless. She doesn't have to know she hit him. She doesn't even have to know she hit him.
How is this man still talking?
But she did. She did. And she left a man who was kind and generous and thoughtful. She left him alone.
Mid-sentence, Helena. Stop the
Could I
mid-sentence.
have slide 22, please?
And he's still talking.
He is not an it. John O'Keefe is not a body. John O'Keefe is not a buffalo on a prairie. John O'Keefe was a person, and he was murdered by Karen Reed.
Take that.
She just let him.
All
She
right,
just let him.
jurors, the next up is my instructions to you on the law. I'm not going to do that right now. You've been sitting for a long time. So I do have to tell you, even though you've just heard the closing argument, you cannot discuss this case even with each other. All right? So we'll send you back for lunch. It's going to be a shorter lunch. My instructions are long. And we want you to be able to get this case to start deliberations today. So
Do they say
I'm going to
anything
send you
about
that maybe about a half
how
an
long
hour.
he
Is that
goes
enough
over?
time for you folks?
No, they just went to sidebar.
So we'll give you a half an hour for lunch, and then we'll come back. I'll give you my instructions on the law, and then the jurors will go out to deliberate. I know there are 18 of you. We seat only 12 deliberating jurors, so 6 of you are going to be alternates. I can just tell you that. You know the odds, right? And I can tell you it's Mr. McDermott's least favorite part of his job is smoking. So we'll do that this afternoon. Do not discuss this case. We'll see you in about a half hour.
Hank Brennan is a master gaslighter. If there's a couple jurors who are susceptible to gaslighting, they'll think she's guilty. I do not believe you'll ever get all 12 jurors to say guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I think Alan Jackson's closing was amazing. I think it was amazing. I think it hit all the points it needed to hit. I think it was strong. I think he was commanding. I think he was forceful. Like I said, the only thing I would change is I would have, if he knew he had time to go over, I think I would have went through each one of their witnesses and why they're liars and why their story doesn't make sense. Hank Brennan is a gaslighter, so I don't even want to go over his closing. There were so many parts that he just completely misstated what was happening. He did what he does. But I don't see all 12 of them ever getting to guilty. I think this is a not guilty or another hung jury. For Karen's sake and for her sanity and for her health and for her wealth and for her wellness, I'm hoping for not guilty. But there are some jurors that are just susceptible. There are people who just bend and buckle to gaslighting. They just do. They can't help it. For me, it makes me irrationally angry. But some people do well with it. It was disgusting. It was disgusting. Here comes drama. It was a disgusting display of gaslighting. But all right, guys, that was it. We're gonna get the judge's instructions, and I do want to hear if she give them the instruction about that hoodie. I don't think she did, because I feel like Alan Jackson made it a point to mention it in his closing. Took up about 5 minutes, which means she's not gonna do it. But I mean, did we expect her to do anything to reprimand Hank Brennan in that courtroom? Doubt it. Doubt it. She won't even tell them there wasn't a rock there, as if that's gonna. I'm not gonna come back later. I'm actually gonna do some work. But I will. Me and AV, we've been chatting. We're probably gonna do our Monday morning. If they haven't got a verdict, we're gonna do a wrap up. We're gonna talk about the closings. We're gonna talk about what we think. So I'll probably be back on Monday. I won't be back later because I gotta get some work done, y'all. I gotta hope none of my directors was on YouTube today. But I will holler at you guys later. Thanks for sticking with me, all my members. I appreciated you. I loved our little chat. It felt real intimate and secret. I loved it. Thanks guys for joining. Thanks for all the new members who became members. Thanks for all my returning members. I love you. Love you, love you, love you. We will see what she has to say later. Gotta go, guys. Gotta actually do some work today. Thanks for joining me. Bye.